Chapter 4350. Jian Wushuang's divine strength is tens of thousands of times greater than that of Master Ling Ling. At the moment, under the blessing of the primitive universe, the gap between him and Master Ling Ling has reached an incredible level. Has it been enough? Jian Wushuang spit out these 5 words. I. Ling Ling's face turned red, and he couldn't say a word. Now that you've played enough, can you say it well? Jian Wushuang's expression was calm, and he released his 5 fingers holding the flame gun. Suddenly, the Lord of the Puppets, who was too late to pull back, was too late to react, his body fluttered, and he almost fell from the air. The Lord of the Puppets, who clenched his flame gun again, grinned again on his face. Huh, you took my holy ground, and now you are so embarrassed to tell me, do you want me to speak well? If you want this suzerain to speak well, then take my first move. Mystery, Qi may really fire. Ling Ling shouted loudly, his hands were fierce. Suddenly, the flame gun disappeared and turned into a golden flame. As soon as this golden flame came out, it suddenly seemed to burn the sky, turning the entire sky and the earth into a sea of fire. The sword unparalleled under this sea of fire is like a flat boat in the sea of anger, as if it would be swallowed by the sea of fire at any time. Go to hell! The Lingzhu Lord smirked, and his hands were torn again. Instantly, this golden flame turned into a lifelike golden fire dragon. Each scale was shining, and the flames stepped on his feet. Go with! The Lord Lingling yelled and pushed forward fiercely. Instantly, this golden fire dragon arrogantly screamed at the sword, biting at the sword. Stubbornness! Jian Wushuang shook his head. He wanted to use Wu Crying God to smash this fire dragon, but it seemed like he had thought of something. Instead of pulling out Wu Crying God's sword, he turned his right hand and a bronze ancient tripod appeared out of his hands. The bronze ancient tripod was repressed by Jian Wushuang's divine power. The original mighty horse has been restored to its original shape, like an iron golem of Heibukikyu. Just try your might. Jian Wushuang's eyes narrowed, grasping the bronze ancient tripod and throwing it forward, he immediately smashed towards the fire dragon in the proud world. However, in order to be afraid of this tripod, Jian Wushuang directly smashed the Lingzhu Lord into ashes and controlled the power, and only used less than 10% of the power of the bronze ancient tripod. Hey! I saw the bronze ancient tripod suddenly turned into a parabola, and hit it fiercely on the mouth of the fire dragon formed by the 7 fires. Huh! There is no obstacle at all, just like a sledgehammer hitting tofu. This mighty fire dragon was directly smashed by an inch, disintegrated, and turned into countless beach flames. This is not over yet. After the bronze ancient tripod smashed the fire dragon, a twirling spin, smashing again towards the Lingzhu Lord. What is this stuff? When Ling Ling's face went blank, he saw a black iron golem that rushed out of countless Mars, constantly enlarging in his pupil. In the end, the bronze ancient tripod drew a radiant arc to the extreme and hit him straight on his forehead. What did I smash? This is the last thought that flashed in the mind of Lord Lingbai. Immediately, his eyes darkened and he passed out. Call out. The unconscious spirit lord fell to the ground and raised countless dust. Holy Lord! How dare you kill the Lord? Suddenly, countless disciples of the Holy Land and Elder Jiufeng who watched the battle yelled. It was just that they were full of embarrassment and impetuous appearance, but none of them dared to step forward, but actually faced sword unparalleled. Jian Wushuang seemed to be ignorant of them and did not care about them, but looked at the bronze ancient tripod and frowned. A light flashed in his eyes. This is the first time he has used this bronze ancient tripod to face the enemy. He has tried his best to control the strength of the bronze ancient tripod and has only used 10% of the strength of the bronze ancient tripod itself. I didn't expect that even if it did, the sacred body of the Lord of the Gods would be nearly collapsed, and the spirit was directly occluded under severe blows. This is an invincible master. If he used the innate air in the bronze ancient tripod, would the power still be available? It seems that the strength of this bronze ancient tripod is far beyond my imagination. Thinking of this, Jian Wu's eyes flickered, and his thoughts were full of moments. After a moment, Jian Wushuang stretched out his right hand and grabbed it, and the majestic power poured out, and the bronze ancient tripod was captured back, and it was collected into the ring. Don't worry, you lord is fine. Jian Wushuang lowered his head and gave a glance to everyone in the Holy Land. Seeing Jian Wushuang's eyes, they shuddered in their hearts. They just finally saw it clearly. The thing that did not slip away and smashed the suzerain turned out to be a bronze ancient tripod. A tripod? This is too fierce. 1 month has passed. In this month, Jian Wushuang did not leave Ling Ling Holy Land, but quietly waited for Ling Ling Holy Lord to wake up. For Jian Wushuang, the Holy Land of Sacred Gods, although it is just a common force that can be destroyed, but he has never acted in favor of others. He said before that he would pay resources to make up for the spirit. Sacred place, then he will naturally say it. At the 7th peak of Ling Ling, there is a cliff overlooking the entire Ling Ling Holy Land. Jian Wushuang sat cross-legged on the edge of the cliff, silently comprehending the avenue. The master of my heart respected and respectfully stood behind Jian Wushuang like a servant. Since Jian Wushuang defeated Ling Ling Master a month ago with a trick of bronze guding, she was completely convinced by Jian Wushuang. Don't abandon your lord. Lord has awakened this morning. Gong Xian dominated complimently. Jian Wushuang's back was dominated by Xin, nodded when he heard the words, and stood up. Let's go and see him. Yes. After a while, Jian Wushuang saw the Lingzhu Holy Lord in the sovereign hall of the Lingzhu Holy Land. The sober lord, who was awake, was still weak, although his body was still full of cracks, but his face had recovered a lot. However, he was like a frosted eggplant, with a weak expression and a low sigh, as if he was aging for decades. He looked at Jian Wushuang, who stepped into the hall step by step. His anger on his face had disappeared, and it was replaced by helplessness. Sir, you have already taken the innate fire, and I am not your opponent. What else do you want to do? My temple is small and I can't stand it. The Lord Ling Ling said helplessly. Jian Wushuang heard a smile and said, Sir Lord, don't you worry, I just came to pay you compensation. Make up. He was still frustrated, like the Holy Lord who frosted the eggplant, and suddenly came to spirit. His waist was straight, and his eyes shot bright. Chapter 43:51. Sir, how do you plan to compensate? Light lingered in the Lord's eyes. He said, seeing the sword unparalleled, could not help but be a little bit dumb. If this Ling Di Lord had this attitude, wouldn't it be nice? After a pause, Jian Wushuang groaned 1 or 2, and said, 100 million source stone of the universe, 50 top magic drugs, 50 top magic materials, plus 10 finished top-level magical treasures. Jian Wushuang said slowly. Every time he said the same compensation, the Lord of the Lingering Lord couldn't help beating. After he finished speaking, the Lord of Lingering was already staring at Venus. This. Ling Ling's Lord swallowed, his arms trembling with excitement. 100 million source rocks of the universe is enough to buy dozens of celestial holy places in this cosmic wilderness. 50 top-level magic drugs can even cultivate many ultimate dominators. There are also 50 top-level magic materials, and 10 top-level finished products are precious. It is pitiful to see that in this Holy Spirit holy place, he is the Holy Spirit Holy Master, holding a top rule of treasure. The Holy Land of Holy Spirit has really fallen for too long, and the slightly valuable things in the Holy Land have already been cleaned up by other forces. It's enough to make me sacred to the Holy Land and double my strength. The Ling Ling Lord exclaimed secretly. Jian Wushuang smiled slightly and said, Lingering the Lord, these resources that I have produced, even if they are not as good as that of the innate fire of Manchi, what do you think? The Lord Ling Ling groaned slightly. Even if he didn't agree, what would happen? Okay, let's say that. The Lord Ling Ling bit his teeth heavily. Jian Wushuang nodded with satisfaction. Good. Immediately, Jian Wushuang surrendered a ring of heaven and earth to let the Lord of the Lingyi clear up in person. After half a day, Jian Wushuang quit in the eyes of everyone in Ling Di Holy Land. Ling Di Holy Land outside the gate. Don't abandon your excellency, don't you stay long? he said with a bit of perseverance on his master's face. For some reason, during the period of following Jian Wushuang, she slowly developed a dependency and a feeling of inexplicability and unclearness, not even her own. Wait. Jian Wushuang smiled slightly at her. After that, Jian Wushuang arched her hand and said, "Don't give it away, let's just stop there." The voice fell, and Jian Wushuang stepped on his right foot and suddenly turned into a streamer, darting toward the starry sky in the distance, like a flat boat sailing into the Shanghai. My heart dominated as Jian Wushuang disappeared into the sky's back, and there was a puddle on his face. If I leave today, I'm afraid it's a difference and there is no date in this life. In the vast sea of stars, Jian Wushuang, while refining bronze ancient tripods, was driving a cosmic boat, constantly driving into the depths of the wild wilderness. In the blink of an eye, 10,000 years passed. In this 10,000 years, Jian Wushuang constantly changed his name and changed his name, changed his appearance, and walked in the wild wilderness of the universe to collect the innate 5 elements. Under this 10,000-year collection, 4 of the innate auras of the 5 elements have been collected by him: Atsuki, Dinghua, Gingjin, and Haishui, as long as 1 more Cure Earth is collected. Qi, congenital 5 elements, you can collect perfection. And the bronze ancient tripod will also really open. It's just that the search for congenital aura is far more difficult than the other 4 congenital auras. Jian Wushuang searched for 3,000 years and never discovered the news of the congenital aura. Therefore, Jian Wushuang simply slowed down and began to realize the avenue. In this 10,000-year period, he wandered in the secular world, sometimes like a scholar who traveled far away, sometimes like a Confucian old Confucianist, sometimes like a warrior standing upright, watching 100 wars, look at the forests, see the ebb and flow, and watch the lives of others. He saw the youthful spirit, the middle-aged calmness, and the old world. Jian Wushuang gradually found out that between lives drink and 1 peck, it was decided by heaven, like reincarnation. However, the more Jian Shuangshuang looked, the more he lost. Tao, what exactly is it? Just like looking at mountains is not looking at mountains, now Jian Wushuang has fallen into a bottleneck state. But Jian Wushuang knew in his heart that although he was lost now, it was the closest time to the road of understanding. Once he can really see the avenue of heaven, he will be like a nirvana born again, he will really rise up and realize the true meaning of the avenue. Thus, a glimpse of the opportunity to become the supreme divine realm. An unknown star field, called the Qianlin realm. Sword Wushuang turned into an old Confucianist, his hair was white, he was holding a crutch, his body was slightly sloppy, and he walked step by step on the official road outside the city. Cold as frost walked beside him, and also turned into an old woman with frosty hair and wrinkled face. In this 10,000-year period, Lung Rushuang finally broke through to the ultimate domination. The two hobbled forward, just like an ordinary old man. No one would have thought that any one of the two would have the mighty power to pinch the planet. "Old lady, there is a tea stand in front of Let's Go to Rest." Jian Wushuang bowed his head slightly, looked at the cold frost standing beside him, and smiled. "Well, old sword head." Lung Rushuang smiled back and looked at Jian Wushuang's appearance, and could not help feeling. Both of them are now the ultimate dominating realm. They will never die, and it is impossible for them to be whitehead to old. It's not bad to see each other's appearance now. They were not fast, just like the most ordinary old man, crutching, walking towards the tea stall ahead. The astral force value is not high, or the strongest in the entire astral area is just the main realm of the rule. With Jian Wushuang's current strength, I am afraid he can give this astral area blown out. Entering the tea stall, the owner of the tea stall is a half-elegant coquettish lady with a long-lasting charm. There is a 10-year-old child under her knee, waving a wooden sword, babbling, saying something I do and know where to learn from. Rivers and lakes black words. 2. What are you drinking? The owner of this tea stall was very kind, and when they saw Jian Wushuang and Lung Rushuang coming in, they didn't hate them because of their age. Instead, they respectfully pulled away the wooden chairs and helped them sit down. "Just some coarse tea," Jian Wushuang said with a smile. "Well, wait a second." The owner of the tea stall wiped the fine sweat on her forehead with a rag on her shoulder, twisted her buttocks, and went into the house to go. The boy with the red lips and white teeth under the knee of the owner of the tea stall was a little tired of the sword dance. He stopped, his black and white eyes murmured, and then ran towards Jian Wushuang. "Grandpa, where are you from?" Chapter 43-52. Jian Wushuang looked at the boy who was full of heads and brains, only to find it quite interesting. After looking at the cold frost, he joked and said, "Grandpa and Grandma, come from outside the sky." "Out of heaven?" The boy blinked, his bright eyes blinked, and asked, "Where is it outside?" "Tianwai." Jian Wushuang thought for a while and smiled back. "It's a long way from here. At night, you look up at the sky, the farthest one you see. The stars are where my grandpa comes." The little boy heard the words, and suddenly pouted his mouth, shook his head and said, "Grandpa, you bullshit. My mother told me that the stars in the sky are places where people can only go after they die. My father, who lives now on the stars." Jian Wushuang heard the words a little dumb, heard the second half of the sentence, and couldn't help but sighed slightly, reached out and rubbed the little boy's head. "You are so smart. Grandpa told you a lie." The little boy heard the words, and immediately raised his head, and hummed a little proudly, "Of course, my mother said, I am the smartest child in the world." Jian Wushuang heard the words, and immediately smiled, and did not speak again. And the little boy was of a natural age, and could sit down. He picked up the wooden sword and danced for a while. After a while, the dance was tired, and he ran over again, panting. Asked, "Grandpa, then you came from far away, you must have seen many people. You said, is there a sword fairy in this world?" "Sword fairy?" Jian Wushuang heard the words for a moment, then thought about it, and nodded with a smile and replied, "Of course there is. Grandpa was once the sword fairy." Grandpa, are you the sword fairy?" The little boy suddenly widened his eyes, and then looked up and down the sword Wushuang. He asked suspiciously, "Grandpa, you deceive people, sword fairy all fly in the sky." Jian Wushuang smiled. "Isn't Grandpa saying that he was a sword fairy before, but now he's old, he can't fly?" Lung Wushuang heard the conversation next to her, and couldn't help but smiles. She didn't expect that Jian Wushuang still had such moments of innocence. But she didn't say anything. As the wife of Jian Wushuang, only she knew that she was being rewarded by the entire universe, and the pressure in her heart was due to Jian Wushuang in the Temple of Life. If this allows Jian Wushuang to relax briefly, then why not? When the little boy heard Jian Wushuang's words, his big eyes were obviously full of unbelief, but he didn't know how to refute. After thinking hard for a while, he asked with his neck around his neck, "Then, that Grandpa, tell me, how did you become a sword fairy before I will believe you?" "Okay." Jian Wushuang nodded his head, then raised his head to look at the sky, and there was a flash of nostalgic memory in the old and muddy eyes. That would have to be said a long time ago. The sunset was sloping west and time was passing. Jian Wushuang picked some interesting things to tell the little boy. He immediately heard the little boy's eyes widened, his expression was wonderful, his heart was ups and downs, full of longing. After a moment, Jian Wushuang stopped slowly and shook his head and laughed. "Well, let's stop here today." It wasn't until the little boy passed a long time before he seemed to be waking up to his dreams. When he looked at Jian Wushuang again, his eyes were already full of worship. "Grandpa, I'll tell you secretly, my sword practice will become a sword fairy like you in the future." He held the wooden sword in his hands tightly, his eyes were full of tenderness. "As long as you persist, you will." Jian Wushuang replied with a smile. The little boy was happy for a while when he heard Jian Wushuang's affirmation. He even asked Jian Wushuang how many times, only after he got the sword's affirmation. After a moment, his eyes turned as if thinking of something, and he was curious and asked, "Grandpa, what did you practice sword for?" Jian Wushuang smiled and just wanted to answer, but suddenly the whole person was holding back. "Myself. Why did you practice sword?" Jian Wushuang didn't speak, but he looked up at the sky with 1,000 thoughts in his heart. Everyone has a reason to become stronger, or in other words, call it obsession. with this obsession, go all the way forward, and dying without regret, you can open up your own way. So, what is your obsession? Sword Wushuang can answer this question. At the beginning, his devotion was to be able to protect himself from bullying, to find his father Jian Nantian, and to stay in this world. So, as the other party became more and more powerful, he became so muddled that he went through every level and made himself stronger. Until now, he has become the most powerful existence in the entire universe except the Supreme. But his sword is unparalleled, but after a moment, he actively wants to become stronger? What to do? Taking a closer look at all his actions is actually a counterattack against pressure from all parties. Even now, he wants to realize the Tao, to collect the innate 5 elements, and to break through the supreme divine realm, just to make himself stronger, to face the dragons, to face all the crusades his power. Then, if one day his sword is unparalleled and the universe is invincible, no one in the world can press him for half a point, wouldn't he not practice? Is it stagnant? In Jian Wu's eyes, a sense of confusion gradually appeared. His divine power began to get messy. Fu Jun, seeing as cold as frost, his face suddenly changed slightly, and he immediately swung his right hand to form an enchantment, wrapping her and sword unparalleled. She knows that Jian Wushuang is definitely enlightened and is now in a most critical stage. What she can do is not let anyone disturb him. Within the enchantment, Jian Wushuang fell into a puzzle like never before, as if sinking into the deep sea, sinking. He was completely lost. What is your own Tao? Time flicked, 3 days passed. Under this enchantment, Jian Wushuang and Leng Rushuang seemed to disappear into the world out of thin air. The two of them sat clearly in front of the tea stall, but no one could see them and touch them. This naturally caused another surprise. The little boy was so excited that he shouted again and again, "My dear, I have met a fairy." The tea stall owner also stayed a while, then quickly knelt on the ground, slammed her head 3 times, and even called the gods to come to the world. The sword in the enchantment is extremely critical. Throughout the ages, the avenue of comprehension failed, and then Daoxin completely collapsed, turning into a walking dead, a powerful humanoid machine, countless. Just when Jian Wushuang was about to collapse Daoxin, and to follow those people. Suddenly, a human face appeared in Jian Wushuang's conscious world. That's Geniki. Chapter 43-53. At this moment, the sword unparalleled fell into a strange state. He was vaguely conscious, as if he was in a deep sea below 9,000 miles, and the power of destroying the heavens and the earth couldn't show the slightest. He could only sink continuously. Sink. His chest seemed to be pressed against a huge stone, which made him breathless. Tao, what exactly is it? This path is not heaven, but a path opened up by myself. The avenue is 3,000. Everyone's Tao is different. Some people have the absolute confidence of I'm invincible, and some people are the indomitable perseverance of the world is so difficult. Jian Wushuang closed his eyes, and his mind was chaotic. Just as he was lost in the middle of the road, a face suddenly appeared in the chaotic consciousness. This face is Xuani. Suddenly, it was like lighting a candle in the middle of a long night, and the dark world was full of light. Master! Jian Wushuang suddenly woke up. Instantly, countless thoughts flowed into Jian Wushuang's mind. From knowing Xuani to Zuanyi's efforts to protect him, the old pictures kept playing in his mind. This face is not the mark that Hyun-yi left in his mind, but the bond that he buried deep in himself. It seemed like a blink of an eye and a blink of an eye for thousands of years. Jian Wushuang's thoughts became clearer and clearer. After Xian-yi, he saw more and more faces. In these faces, there was Jian Nantian who had once been in order to protect him, and the Supreme of Blood, who was willing to die for him, and the cold and enthusiastic, and for the Gaver who was willing to fight the whole universe. There are too many people who have paid a huge price in order to protect Jian Wushuang. Human faces one after another kept emerging in Jian Wushuang's mind. At this moment, Jian Wushuang understood. As if clearing the clouds and seeing the bright moon, Jian Wushuang, who was lost in the Tao, was completely awake. Boom! Suddenly, Jian Wushuang's eyes opened, and countless gods flashed in his eyes. My word is the guardian. Not only to protect myself, but also everyone who has protected me. I want to guard the master, I want to guard the cold as frost, and the temple of life. Dragons have inverse scales, and they die immediately. They are my inverse scales. And only by becoming stronger can I protect the person I want to protect. I can protect myself. At this moment, Jian Wushuang's eyes were clear, full of determination and unquestionable determination. Immediately, the sword unparalleled changed. First of all, his divine power became more and more pure, as if the jade had been stripped of impurities, and became bright. The biggest difference between the Supreme and the Master is the difference in the quality of the divine power. The supreme divine power unique to the Supreme is the supreme dependence of the Supreme above the sky, sitting alone in the clouds, overlooking all beings. And sword unparalleled. Although his divine power did not break into the supreme divine power, but the divine power that dominates the realm, there is a difference between the cloud and mud. Immediately afterwards, he was full of breath, and the same changed. I saw his breath of Xian to Zhang, first began to skyrocket, and then began to transform in an unknown direction. This breath makes Jian Wushuang look more transparent, purer and clearer. Let him raise his hands, full of charm. If someone notices Jian Wushuang at this time, they will find that Jian Wushuang now seems to be no longer an individual, but an avatar. Staring at the sword unparalleled is like staring at the road. Time passed slowly, Jian Wushuang immersed in the realization of the Tao, and the realization of the Tao began to go 1,000 miles. Similarly, he began to move towards the Supreme. In the blink of an eye, the time of a jiazi passed. For monks, a time is nothing more than a snap. But for ordinary people, a jiazi is already half of his life, enough to turn a child into a gray-haired old man. Cosmic wilderness, an unknown star field within the astral realm. Early morning. A shabby tea stand on the official road outside the city has not yet opened. An old widower with a thin body and white hair with a mulch in his head walked from Tianyan beside the official road, put a covered with yellow mud on his shoulders behind the door, and hit a cold basin. The well water washed his face, picked up a little yellowish white cloth next to the stove, put it on his shoulders, and began to spread a tea stand outside the house. It didn't take long for the tea stand to stand up and didn't take much time. Because this tea stand is too simple, move a few tables and wooden chairs from the house and place it outside the house. Then a stick is erected, and an apricot and yellow flag with the word tea is tied to the tip of the stick. The tea stand is fine. This kind of thing has been repeated for decades by old widowers. Later, he turned into the house and began to prepare some tea and groceries, in case there was a tea visitor at the door to eat. What he didn't know was, shortly after he turned and entered the house. On the tea stand outside the room, there was a sudden twist in the void, and immediately 2 young men and women appeared out of thin air. The young man on the left, with a beautiful and stern look, his black hair spread down, but those deep eyes were exceptionally clear, like the blue sky and the sea, as pure as jade. This person, it is the sword unparalleled after comprehending the avenue. The whole time of Jiazi Jian Wushuang is immersed in the avenue of understanding. If he used to look like a magic sword with the same sheath and was so sharp that he couldn't dare look straight at him, now he looks like a mountain in the distance and water in the distance. In the middle of it, people can't help but feel good at first glance. In the 60 years of this man, whether it is his breath of divine power or the realm of strength, earth-shaking changes have taken place. The current sword Wushuang, although it has not yet broken through the realm of the supreme realm, is far too much stronger than the previous one, and it is only a short distance away from the supreme divine realm. And the beautiful woman next to him was naturally cold. Jian Wushuang understood the avenue for 60 years, and Leng Rushuang was next to him. He guarded him for 60 years. Now, Jian Wushuang finally clears the gate, and Leng Rushuang has just removed the enchantment. Fu Jun, you seem a little different. Cold as frost looked at Jian Wushuang up and down, a little surprised. Is that so? Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows, then said with a slight smile, "How is it different?" Lung Wushuang thought for a moment and shook his head and said, "I can't say it for a while, anyway, it feels like there is no fireworks in the world. At first glance, it feels very close. In fact, it looks far away." Jian Wushuang heard a bit of contemplation after hearing the words. This is all the influence brought by the Tao. I'm afraid that with his more and more understanding of the Tao, this temperament will become stronger and stronger. Well, when did the two come? Just then, the old widower walked out with a bowl of pastry groceries in his hand and saw Jian Wushuang and frost slightly. Chapter 43-54. Okay. Jian Wushuang heard the words and looked at the coward old man, and his face was suddenly slightly surprised. This old man is not someone else. It was Cheng Huan who was at his knees and shouted Jian Wushuang to tell him a story. He wanted to fight sword rivers and lakes in the future and become a fairy child with red lips and teeth. Unexpectedly, he just closed the door and turned out to be something wrong. The once naughty childish child has now become a gray-haired old man. I'm afraid that the owner of the tea stall, which still has the charm, has already become a cultivated luss. Looking at this person now, Jian Wushuang has long lost his childhood innocence and is full of twilight. This could not help but make Jian Wushuang slightly sighed. The world is vicissitudes. Do you not recognize me? Converging his thoughts, Jian Wushuang smiled slightly at him. What? The old man heard the words for a moment and looked at Jian Wushuang up and down. When he saw Jian Wushuang's clothes, his face was fair and handsome, and the whole man was full of gentleness and elegance. Immediately, the old man wondered, "My son, is it old and you have seen it before?" Before waiting for Jian Wushuang to speak, he shook his head and said, "The son is extraordinary and very extraordinary. He has never seen anyone like a son in his life. If he has seen him, he will never forget it. Forgiveness and obscurity, I really don't recognize it." Jian Wushuang heard a smile and made a decision at the same time. Speaking of which, he can comprehend the avenue, he also has to thank the old man for asking casually when he was a child and unlocked the key to his avenue. Therefore, Jian Wushuang intends to give him a chance. If this person still has a trace of childlike innocence and does not forget his young dreams, then Jian Wushuang will wear his practice path and will start on the road of practice. If this person has long forgotten his dream of that year, then he will be protected to live 100 years old without worry and spend his old age. Stupid child, I ask you, is your wooden sword still alive? But you still have to move your sword, and want to be the name of the quake-riding sword fairy? Jian Wushuang looked at him and asked lightly. Suddenly, the old widower was trembling, looking at Jian Wushuang's eyes as horrified as ghosts. Are you the old? The old coward exclaimed in disbelief, and then slammed down on the ground with a slap, and repeatedly scratched his head. His life was gloomy and unpredictable. For him, perhaps the biggest episode in his life was Jian Wushuang, who told him the story of Sword Fairy when he was young. Even though time is running out, Xiaohua is no longer, and he has never forgotten the strange encounter he encountered in his youth. Even now in his wooden house, there are still carvings of the old man like Jian Wushuang and the cold frost, which is worshipped daily as a god. Get up. Jian Wushuang's expression was calm. He lifted his right hand up, and suddenly a soft divine power poured out, holding up the old widower kneeling on the ground. No need to bow down, you just have to answer my question. The old woodman heard the words, and immediately hit the spirit, and excitedly replied, Old immortal, the immortal words of that year, old. The junior can't forget it, even the wooden sword, the junior is still at home. After speaking, he quickly turned around and pulled out the wooden sword at the bottom of the box from the firewood house. The wooden sword at this moment seemed to grow old with him, covered with dust, and covered with moldy white fur everywhere. There are wormholes left by insect bites. The sword was unparalleled and nodded slightly. Well, I'll send you a fortune today. Come here. The coward old man heard the words, dared not to delay in the slightest, and immediately knelt down in front of the sword without double-sided, his expression as religious as a believer. Jian Wushuang stretched out his right hand and slowly pressed it on the head of the widower's old head. Immediately, a gentle divine power emerged from the swordless hands and entered the coward's body, washing his muscles and sacrifice for him. Puff puff. A trace of sticky black stinky juice poured from the coward's old body. These are the dark illnesses left by the widower's body for many years, as well as the aging cells and so on. The fairy touches me and grows up. For today's Jian Wushuang, reversing all life and death is really simple. The old coward trembled, and he could feel that he was like an old body filled with lead, and was recovering young and reaching the peak state at a very fast speed. A miracle. This is a miracle. The widower shouted from the bottom of his heart, looking at Jian Wushuang's gaze, even more awe-like. After a moment, Jian Wushuang retracted his right hand. Looking at the widower, the whole person has undergone monstrous changes. Although he is still old and his face is still covered with wrinkles, the spirit and energy exuding from his body are more vigorous than when ordinary people are younger. Immediately, Jian Wushuang doubled his right hand again, and a practice book appeared in his hands. Jian Wushuang said calmly, "The old man is dying, staying for thousands of years, and the martyrs are old age, with great heart. Today I will send you some good fortune. You only need to enlighten you day and night, and go up and down. You can open the door of longevity, and be a sword fairy you want to be when you were young. This is also a cause and effect between you and me. Thank you for the reward." Suddenly, the old widower was bursting into tears, and continued to slap his head toward Jian Wushuang, making a muffled sound of. By the time he looked up, his eyes were empty. The pair of immortal relatives had no idea when, in front of him, there was only one volume of practice exercises left in front of him. "Have you gone?" The widower was a little lost, then carefully put away this volume of practice. He put away the tea stand and closed the wooden door. From then on, in this unknown starfield in the wild wilderness of the universe, there was no coward old man, but a white-haired sword fairy. At the same time, a cosmic boat is fading towards the vast sea of stars inside the cosmic starry sky and beyond the unknown star field. In a blink of an eye, the cosmic boat disappeared into this star field. "Fu Jun, where are we going now?" Cold as frost asked in the spacecraft. Jian Wushuang groaned slightly, and then replied, "If I remember well, it will not be long before the Universe Festival begins." After a pause, Jian Wushuang continued, "I heard earlier that in the heavenly star domain, there was the birth of Shiliang, and we just went there to see if there is any congenital aura, and it is best to rush to the cosmic race before, collect the aura of the 5 elements of perfection. Because after the grand cosmic event, I guess there will be no time." Cold as frost heard the words, Lu Mei gently picked, wondering, why? Jian Wushuang didn't reply, but turned to look into the depths of the universe, where the top powers stood, and the corner of his mouth gradually evoked a wave of murderous Mori cold smile. Chapter 4355 Comprehending the Great Tao. Jian Wushuang looked at the strong-looking boy and found him quite interesting. After exchanging a look with Lung Rushuang, he jokingly replied, "Grandpa, Grandma, you came from beyond the heavens." "Beyond the heavens?" The boy was stunned. He blinked his bright eyes and asked, "Where is beyond the heavens?" "Oh, beyond the heavens," Jian Wushuang thought for a while and replied with a smile, "It's a place that's very, very far from here. When night comes, you can look up at the sky and see the furthest star from you. That's where I came from." The boy pouted and shook his head. "Grandfather, you're talking nonsense. Mother told me that the stars in the sky are places that people can only go to after they die. My father is living on the star now." Hearing this, Jian Wushuang was dumbfounded. But when he heard the second half of the sentence, he could not help but sigh softly. He reached out his hand and rubbed the little boy's head. "You're so smart, you even saw through Grandpa's lie." When the little boy heard this, he immediately raised his head and snorted with pride. "Of course. Mother said that I'm the smartest child in the world." Hearing this, Jian Wushuang smiled and didn't say anything. As for the little boy, he was at the age where he was naturally playful, so how could he sit down? He picked up the wooden sword and danced for a while. After a while, He was tired of dancing and ran over again. He asked while panting, "Grandpa, you must have seen a lot of people since you came from far away. Do you think there are sword immortals in this world?" Sword immortal? Jian Wushuang was stunned. He thought for a moment, then nodded and replied with a smile, "Of course there is. Grandfather was once a sword immortal." "Ah, Grandpa, you're a sword immortal?" The little boy's eyes suddenly widened. He sized up Jian Wushuang and asked with suspicion, "Grandpa, you're lying. Sword immortals all fly in the sky." Jian Wushuang laughed. "Grandpa, didn't you say that I used to be a sword immortal? But now I'm old and can't fly anymore." Hearing this, Leng Rushuang burst into laughter. She had never thought that Jian Wushuang could be so innocent. However, she didn't say anything. As Jian Wushuang's wife, she was the only one who knew how much pressure Jian Wushuang, who had a bounty on his head and the Divine Life Palace had suffered a great calamity because of her, was under. If this could allow Jian Wushuang to relax for a short while, why not? Hearing Jian Wushuang's words, the little boy's big eyes were filled with disbelief, but he didn't know how to refute it. After thinking for a while, he straightened his neck and asked, Then, Grandpa, tell me how you became a sword immortal in the past and I'll believe you." "All right." Jian Wushuang nodded and then looked up at the sky. His old and turbid eyes flashed with a touch of nostalgia. "Then I'll have to start from a long, long time ago. As the sun set in the west, time gradually passed." Jian Wushuang picked out some interesting things to tell the little boy. Suddenly, the little boy's eyes widened, and his expression was wonderful. His heart was full of ups and downs, and he was full of longing. After a while, Jian Wushuang slowly stopped talking. He shook his head and smiled. "All right, let's stop here for today." The little boy only came back to his senses after a long time, as if he had just woken up from a dream. When he looked at Jian Wushuang again, his eyes were full of admiration. "Grandpa, let me tell you a secret. I'm practicing the sword so that I can become a sword immortal like you in the future." He tightly held the wooden sword in his hand, his eyes full of young hesitation. "As long as I persevere, I will." Jian Wushuang replied with a smile. The little boy was overjoyed when he heard Jian Wushuang's affirmation. He asked Jian Wushuang several times and only laughed foolishly when he got Jian Wushuang's affirmation. After a while, he rolled his eyes as if he had thought of something. He then asked curiously, "Grandpa, why did you practice the sword then?" "Me." Hearing this, Jian Wushuang smiled. Just as he was about to answer, he suddenly froze. Why did he practice the sword in the first place? Jian Wushuang didn't say anything. He just looked up at the sky in a daze, and a myriad of thoughts surged in his heart. Everyone had their own reasons to become stronger, or rather, it was called obsession. With this obsession, he would be able to forge his own Tao without regret even if he died 10,000 times. Then what was his obsession? Jian Wushuang could answer this question. In the beginning, his obsession was to protect himself, to not be bullied, to find his father, Jian Nantian, and to survive in this world. Thus, as the other party became stronger and stronger, he muddle-headed and passed through one obstacle after another, making himself stronger and stronger. Now, he had become the most powerful existence in the entire universe, except for the Supremes. But he, Jian Wushuang, had never taken the initiative to become stronger. What should he do? Looking closely at all of his actions, it was actually just a counterattack to the pressure from all sides. Even now, he wanted to comprehend the Tao, collect the innate 5 elements Qi, and break through to the supreme divine realm. All of this was just to make himself stronger so that he could face the Dragon Clan and all the forces that wanted to suppress him. Then, if one day he, Jian Wushuang, became invincible in the universe and no one in the world could suppress him, would he stop cultivating? Was it going to stagnate? Jian Wushuang's eyes gradually revealed a hint of confusion. The divine power in his body started to become chaotic. "My husband." Seeing this, Leng Rushuang's expression changed slightly. She quickly waved her right hand and formed a ward, which wrapped her and Jian Wushuang. She knew that Jian Wushuang must have understood something and was now at the most critical stage. All she could do was to not let anyone disturb him. Inside the wizardry barrier, Jian Wushuang fell into an unprecedented state of confusion. It was as if he had fallen into the deep sea and was constantly sinking. He was completely lost. What was his Tao? Time flew by and 3 days passed. In the wizardry barrier, Jian Wushuang and Leng Rushuang seemed to have disappeared from the world. They were sitting in front of the tea stall, but no one could see or touch them. This naturally caused another wave of surprise. The little boy was extremely excited and repeatedly exclaimed, "Mother, I've met an immortal." The lady boss was also stunned. Then she quickly knelt on the ground and kowtowed 3 times, calling for the arrival of the immortals. Jian Wushuang, who was in the ward, was in an extremely critical situation. Since ancient times, countless experts had failed to comprehend the great Tao, and then their Tao hearts had completely collapsed, turning them into walking corpses or human-shaped machines. Just as Jian Wushuang's Tao heart was about to collapse, and he was about to follow in the footsteps of those people. Suddenly, a human face appeared in Jian Wushuang's consciousness. That was Xian Yi. Chapter 4356. It's a long story. I don't abandon your excellency. The wind instrument star field was different that day. I thought it would be harder to see it in my life. I can't even meet you again. The young men and women looked at each other and laughed. Jian Wushuang heard a slight jaw and nodded. We are indeed quite destined. The two were from a pair of ancestors of the Tianjian sect in this wild wasteland. Jian Wushuang met when collecting the gas of Haishui 5,000 years ago. At that time, a war broke out in the star domain where the gas of Haishui was located. Both of them it is dominated by the 5th level. Naturally, it is not safe and is being hunted down. The person who chased them was the one who occupied the heir of Haishui. Jian Wushuang slain the man and took away the heir of Haishui. It was also a misery and a blunder. Came down. Since then, the two have been grateful for Jian Wushuang and embarked on a journey. And Jian Wushuang saw that the two were innocent and inexhaustible. After several exchanges, the 3 were familiar. Only later, the 2 returned to Tianjian Zone, and Jian Wushuang continued to collect other innate auras of 5 elements, and left it alone. Unexpectedly, 3,000 years later, the 3 met in this wild star field. Don't abandon your excellency. This time we are following the elders of Zongmin and come here to gain insights. The young man who called the Master of Stardust laughed. Don't abandon your excellency. Are you here for this land? In addition, the young woman who was called to be dominated by Star Rhyme asked with a playful blink. Jian Wushuang nodded slightly after hearing the words and replied, "Well, what about your elders?" The Master of Stardust pointed his finger at the central high platform. An old man in the soap robe sitting next to the owner of the Feng family said, "My parents and the old family owner are old and are talking about it." Jian Wushuang nodded his head, signaled to know. The Stardust dominated for a moment or two and said, "Don't abandon your lord, crouching tigers and dragons in this starry sky. If you want to take the soil, it is better to be careful. I heard that this time the starry sky, the 3 major families in the region are all interested in this soil, especially the first day of the Qing family's pride, and Qingmu is bound to get this soil." Qingmu. Jian Wushuang raised an eyebrow. The Stardust dominated the sound, and his expression gradually became dignified. Yes, that Qingmu is the first genius of this Qing family. No, it should be said that this universe is a wild wasteland, the first genius under thousands of miles of stars. He is extremely talented, but after thousands of years of cultivation, he is already the most powerful among the invincible masters, and bears great fortune. When he was practicing at a young age, he had an adventure, and 3 Tao fruit came into the world and fell beside him. Later, when he traveled to the universe, he was recognized by the Demon Phoenix family, and obtained the blood of Demon Phoenix. Later, when he asked to dominate the realm, he actually caused a vision of the heavens and the earth, and he was recognized by the cosmic extreme treasure, God Magic Halberd. Now, he has been perennially instructed by his ancestor at home in the Qing family, and his strength has no idea how terrible it is. His reputation is known to everyone in the wild wasteland of the universe. Although he has not yet achieved the supreme, almost everyone is convinced that in the 10 Chaos Ages, Qin Mu will become the supreme. Even now, in the wild wilderness of the universe, there are already many people who call him Qing Shaozun. Qin Mu Shaozun? Jian Wushuang's brow lifted, and his eyes filled with interest. Listening to the ruler of Stardust, this genius named Young Herd of Young Herdsmanship is indeed very powerful. Whether it is his own talent or the opportunity of creation, he is considered to be the best in this universe. Million years of achievement in the ultimate dominance, in the universe, in addition to his sword unparalleled, is definitely the most top grade. If it is placed in the depths of the universe, it is enough to compete with the sons of the immortal Holy Land and the sons of the great divine kingdoms. The Master of Stardust continued to say in a deep voice, "It is rumored that Qin Mu Shaozun's current strength, even if placed in Tianjiao and the herd of the starry sky, is enough to rival the existence of a giant." Is that so? Jian Wushuang raised his eyebrows, then smiled slightly and said, "So Qin Mu Shaozun, why don't you participate in Xingkong Ancient Road?" It seemed that I heard that Jian Wu didn't care too much in the bilingual language, and the Stardust Master had not spoken yet, so he saw the Star Duke Dozu saying, "Don't abandon your lord, don't underestimate Qingmu Shaozuan." He didn't go to the Xingkong Ancient Road, but when the Xingkong Ancient Road opened, he happened to be retreating. After he went out, the Xingkong Ancient Road has passed halfway through, the Overlord Sword Wushuang of the Ancient Starry Sky has also left. Qingmu Shaozuan has ambitious ambitions. His goal is to challenge the 10,000-year-old sword in the universe. The sword is supreme, and he has been named the first genius swordsman. When it comes to Qingmu Supreme, the Star Dominion is different from the solemn Stardust Dominion. Her face is full of excitement and worship, and I can't wait to talk to Jian Wushuang carefully about the legendary deeds of Qingmu. It can be seen that she has a lot of respect for that young husband. Stardust dominated the sight, and he couldn't help but stare at the Star Domain Dominion, then looked at Jian Wushuang and said, "Don't abandon your lord, don't give Yuner general insight." Anyway, Jian Wushuang waved his hand, only feeling a little dumb inside. It turns out that, unknowingly, has become the object of challenge for many geniuses in the universe. The three were still chatting suddenly, there was a commotion in the crowd, and I wonder who shouted, "Here are the three big families." All of a sudden, everyone in the audience looked up and looked at the sky. I saw above the sky, first a row of golden carriages came out of the air. This golden carriage is golden and shining. The horse-drawn carriage has double wings on its horseback, a single horn is borne on its forehead, and the golden auspicious cloud is trampled under its feet. It is the golden horn-swallowing beast in the universe. In front of the wagon, a golden flag was inserted, and a huge Lai word was written. This is the relief of the three major families. Immediately after the golden carriage passed through the air, we saw a huge boat with the flag, North, inserted across the sky. This giant boat is extremely towering, like a mountain falling down, making a huge roar. Before this giant boat, two naked giants, backed by chains, dragged the towering giant boat forward. North of the three big families. On Nansha Island, someone was exclaimed. But more people remained silent, focusing their eyes on the tall figure who came alone. He was just one person, walking against the light. It was hard to see the looks, and he did not use any power, but he overwhelmed the audience. In front of this person, whether it is the golden carriage coming out of the air, or the towering giant boat that swept across the void, it is completely discolored. He seemed to be the son of the heavenly selection by nature. When Fang played, he didn't need any words to be the focus of attention. This person is the first day of the universe's wild wasteland. Chapter 4357. Qin Mu Shaozun. The strongest genius recognized in the wild wasteland of the universe, whether it is talent or chance, is the extreme of the universe, and has not yet achieved the supreme deity, but he has been treated the same as the supreme. I saw him coming out of the sky, and the sun and the earth were stepped on by his feet, as if lifted by the sky from the sky, is the darling of the world. Qin Mu Shaozun. All of a sudden, Everyone on Nansha Island shouted. Their expressions of enthusiasm and worship were like devout believers. The Star Master is also in this rank. At this moment, she is not like a master who is high above her, but more like a secular little girl who sees a flirtatious boy. Her expression is excited to the extreme, and she shakes the arms of Stardust, frantically calling. Stardust, look at it fast, this is Qing Mu Shao Zun. Stardust dominated the expression of helplessness, and glanced at Qing Mu Shaozuan, and there was a gloom in his eyes. Both are the ultimate level, but the gap is too big. Is he young Qingmu? Jian Wushuang narrowed his eyes and looked up. I saw Qingmu Shaozhen's handsome face, and the of abundance was like a jade. He looked down, his expression was indifferent, and he could not see any emotions. Immediately afterwards, I saw the owner of the Feng family sitting on the high platform stepping, his body shot out, and he greeted far away. Qingmu Shaozun, siblings, why are you even shocked? The Wind family owner bent over and said with a smile. If you want this piece of land, as long as you send someone to speak up, I will surely take the initiative to send it to you. Where can I let you deign to come and run in person? Qing Mu Shaozuan heard a slight glance at him and said, since you have set the rules, and let everyone take this land by their own abilities, this is the rule of the block. As soon as this remark came to an end, the owner of the Wind family immediately slapped his and shouted, it is worthy of Qing Mu Shaozuan, Gao Yi. On Nansha Island, everyone else nodded. Qing Mu Shaozun Gao Yi. Qing Mu Shaozun Gao Yi. For a moment, the words of praise to Qing Mu Shaozun were like terrifying sounds, boiling against the sky and heading for the sky. Jian Wushuang was in the midst of the crowd, and he didn't notice it. He touched his nose and couldn't help but feel a little funny. This Qingmu Shaozhen's strength is unknown for the time being, but if he talks about the faction, I am afraid that he is inferior to him. After a while, Qingmu Shaozun sat down on the main seat with an expression of pride. The young talents of the other two families looked at Qingmu Shaozuan, who was holding the moon by the stars, and his looks were a little complicated. Little Qingmu. After a moment of hesitation, the people of these two families were saluting towards Qingmu Shaozuan. People have to learn to judge the situation. Qingjia is not weaker than their two supreme families, and Qingmu Shaozuan is likely to become the second largest supreme of Qingjia. At that time, the status of Qingjia will be far away. Beyond these two families, become the wild wilderness of the universe, and say the best monarch. Okay. Qingmu Shaozuan nodded saltily. For him, the young talents of these two families are also good, or the other heroes who are present, even the wild wilderness of the universe, and the entire universe of billions of stars and stars, as long as they have not achieved the supreme, they will not be regarded by him. He considered himself to be eligible to be his opponent. There was only one person, that is, the first day of his life, and the sword was the best sword. He is confident. Today, he has an eye on the entire universe and can fight him a little bit. Only swords are unparalleled. Even he has great confidence to be able to defeat Jian Wushuang within 100 strokes. This is his pride. Winds start from the clouds. He faintly looked at the owner of the Feng family next to him and said, The owner of Fengjia quickly nodded, cleared his throat, got up and stood up, looking at the crowd under the platform. Xinxing said, Shi soil is the treasure of the universe. It can spawn thousands of miles of star fields and endlessly. These treasures should be the strong ones. Therefore, our family is willing to donate the soil, so that the strongest in the audience can get the soil. And if you want to prove your strength, the rules to get Xiang are also simple. You just need to defeat all the opponents in the audience and let everyone serve you, then you are the owner of Xiang. I said so, do you understand? The words fell, and everyone nodded. It is such a truth that treasures reside in strong ones. Immediately, they looked at Qingmu Shaozuan one after another, their eyes flashing for a while. If the person who came this time is not Qingmu Shaozun, they still have the heart to compete for one or two, but when Qingmu Shaozun comes, no one has the confidence to defeat Qingmu Shaozun. I am afraid I will belong to Qingmu Shaozun. Yes, Qingmu Shaozuan is here. Who dares to grab something from him? Shi Yang, will definitely belong to Qing Mu Shaozun. Everyone talked. Sure enough, as they said, after seeing the voice fall, Qingmu Supreme stood up, looked at the audience indifferently and said, "This piece of land, this seat is wanted. Who wants to fight against this seat, is it?" He didn't have a loud voice but was full of power. No one answered. Seeing this, Qingmu Shaozuan became more and more proud in her eyes at the same time. A loneliness surged in her heart. Is the world so big that no one can be his opponent? It was not long before I saw an old man stepping out of the crowd, his face and airways. Qingmu Shaozun, when he was far away in Jiangyan Starfield, he had always heard that Shaozun had great strength. He met each other and wanted to come up and learn. After the old man walked out, someone suddenly exclaimed in the crowd, "Yuan Feng of Jiangyan Star Domain rules." Yuan Feng's is a long-established invincible master, one of the top powerhouses in the wilderness of the universe. Although Qingmu Shaozun is strong, but he has only practiced for tens of millions of years, and Yuan Feng's domination, only in the realm of invincible domination, has impregnated 10 chaotic eras. When it comes to the background, Qingmu Shaozun must be far not as good as Yuan Feng. This battle is exciting. Qingmu Shaozuan raised his eyebrows when he heard the words, looked up and down the Yuan Feng dominated, and said indifferently, 3 tricks. As long as you can take me, I will lose. That Yuan Feng dominated his face did not change. He still laughed, but his heart made a cry. Shaozun, the old man admits that you are strong, but you can beat me with 3 tricks. Isn't it too big? Qingmu Shaozuan didn't lift his eyelids. He turned his right hand, and his shape was domineering. The platinum-colored halberd appeared in his hand. "Stop talking nonsense, let's go." Boom! The next moment, Qingmu Shaozuan dominated towards Yuan Feng, and split it with a halberd. Suddenly, endless divine power spurted out, condensed on this platinum-golden halberd, faintly, but also heard a clear sound of Fengming. In this euphorbia, there seems to be a phoenix born from a fire, soaring into the sky and chanting in the world. Chapter 43-58. The universe is the ultimate treasure, the magic halberd. It is rumored that when Qingmu Shaozun asked for his dominion, he caused a vision of heaven and earth. A sharp halberd radiated from the depths of the universe and fell into the hands of Qingmu Shaozun. He actively recognized the Lord, God's halberd. Besides that, Qingmu Shaozuan also bears the blood of the demon phoenix. Demon phoenix is a large branch of the phoenix family and is fierce and aggressive, also known as Zhuhuang. In an instant, everyone was watching, discussing one after another, like several treasures, saying the supernatural power of Qingmu Shaozuan. The Star Rhyme Master is even more excited, and he continues to introduce to Jian Wushuang and Stardust Master. Look at it quickly, Qingmu Shaozun is going to shoot. This is the first time in 10,000 years that Qingmu Shaozun has shot. Jian Wushuang's expression was light, and he looked at Qingmu Shaozuan at will. I have to say, this Qingmu Shaozuan is indeed quite good. Before he shot it, his breath was not weaker than the Emperor Jinwu defeated by Jian Wushuang in the ancient road of Shinkong. And on the stage. Good job. There was a dignity in the eyes of Na Yuanfeng's master, and he did not dare to magnify it. I saw that his right hand was thrown. A glass abacus suddenly appeared in his hands. Fail. Qingmu Shaozun's expression was indifferent, and he lifted up the magical halberd and pressed towards Yuanfeng's master. This halberd is so heavy that it descends like 3 mountains and 5 mountains, and it is powerful. Endless divine power stirs all directions. When Yuan Feng's dominance changed, the halberd hadn't been pressed down yet, and he felt a back-like feeling, his hair covered with sweat. Go with. He stiffened his head and drank a few words. His 5 fingers quickly fiddled with the abacus. Hey! Suddenly, each abacus spins, as if shooting from the abacus like a meteor, welcoming this halberd. Ha! A loud roar came, and the entire Nansha Island was trembling. Countless dusts floated and formed white smoke. After the white smoke had dissipated, I saw Yuan Feng dominated half-knelt, his face turned into a liver color, and he continued to pant heavily. The Qingmu Shaozuan, who is holding a demon halberd, looks like on the top, looks down at Yuan Feng, and calmly says, "You are defeated." Yuan Feng dominated, struggling to stand up from the ground, and arched his hands bitterly and said, "The power of Qingmu Shaozuan is second to none in the entire universe." After that, he retreated into the crowd lightly and heavily. It is worthy of Qingmu Shaozun, who is also dominated by invincibility, but Yuan Feng dominates. Qingmu Shaozun is really too strong. I think even the sword Wushuang who was blown into the first genius of the universe is far worse than Qingmu Shaozun. It's true that the reason why Jian Wushuang's fame manifests is largely because of the Temple of Life. If it comes to strength, it must not be the opponent of Qingmu Shaozun. Under Supreme, I am afraid that no one will be the enemy of Qingmu Shaozuan. Qingmu Shaozun is invincible. Everyone in the crowd admired. The star rhyme dominated the expression with excitement, a pair of beautiful eyes, full of admiration. The Stardust standing next to the master of star charm, the bitter smile on his face could not help more. In view of this situation, I'm afraid that as long as this Qingmu Shaozuan twiddles his fingers, the prince himself will leave him and turn into Qingmu Shaozun's embrace. Don't abandon your excellency, let me tell you, Qingmu Shaozun is very powerful. Xing Yun dominated and looked back at Xiang Wushuang, blowing a smile. Well, yes. Jian Wushuang nodded. Is it just good? Xing Yun dominated when Yan's mouth, but said nothing. After all, Jian Wushuang had saved her life. However, she had a sigh of relief inexplicably in her heart, and wished that Qingmu Shaozun could teach Jian Wushuang by hand, and let Jian Wushou treat Qingmu Shaozun, and dare not to despise it in the slightest. On the Nansha Island, Qingmu Shaozun's eyes awaited, his expression indifferent and proud. "Does anyone else have a shot?" he asked lightly. There was no response from the audience. It took a long time before a great man dominated by the invincible. However, this man is only a little stronger than Na Yuan Feng, and he was defeated by Qingmu Shaozuan under 2 moves. Time passed slowly. During this period, there were still some invincible masters coming out from the crowd, including the Tianjiao and Su Lao of the other 2 big families, asking for advice from Shaoqin Qingmu. It turned out that there were no surprises. These invincible masters, who had long been known in the wild wasteland of the universe, were less than 3 moves. They were defeated in the hands of Qingmu Shaozun, and they became the footsteps of Qingmu Shaozun's stone, highlighting Qingmu Shaozun becoming more powerful and invincible. After an hour, no one dared to challenge Qingmu Shaozun. Are there no one? That piece of land is here. Qingmu Shaozun's indifferent expression flashed a scorn, and then he turned and walked towards the high platform to receive the interest. A herd of native chicken shit. Qingmu Shaozuan shook his head. Seeing this, the owner of the Feng family quickly drew a large piece of soil from Qiankuan Ring. "Qingmu Shaozun, who is your opponent in the realm of domination?" He laughed first and then pushed forward, saying, "Sa Zun, this is Shiliang." Qingmu Shaozuan nodded, a flash of satisfaction flashed in his eyes, and stretched out his hands toward the soil crowd. Everyone looked at this scene, flashes of envy. Qingmu Shaozun was already strong. Now with this piece of land, I am afraid that he will gain even more strength. At this moment, no one noticed that after the soil was taken out, a young man in a black robe with a white antelope mask flashed in his eyes. In this area, there is indeed a congenital aura of soil. Jian Wushuang felt the change from the bronze ancient tripod in Qiankuan Ring, and there was an irresistible joy in his eyes. He searched for tens of thousands of years, and the only lack of the aura of the 3 elements of the innate air of 5 elements, and finally found it. As long as he gets the chi of the sea soil, he can really open the bronze ancient tripod. The next moment, Jian Wushuang took a deep breath, stepped out of the crowd, and said lightly, "Slow." The words fell, and everyone snorted suddenly, turning to look at Jian Wushuang. "Okay." Including Qingmu Shaozuan on the high platform, holding his right hand to the soil and stagnation, he also turned his head and slowly looked at Jian Wushuang. "Do you want to challenge this seat?" He glanced up and down Jian Wushuang, frowned, and said in a cold tone, This man covered his head and didn't make a shot before, but made a noise when he was about to get Xilyang. Qing Mu Shaozuan flashed his disappointment. Jian Wushuang's expression remained unchanged, calmly asked, "No?" Qing Mu Shaozuan heard that his eyes narrowed, and the corners of his mouth gradually sneered. "Well, that seat is as you wish." "Hey!" The words fell, and I saw that he had taken back the limit of the universe in the ring of heaven and earth, the magic treasure of the treasure god, and appeared in his hands again. Chapter 43:59. At this moment, everyone was confused and said, "Who is this person?" Challenging Qingmu Shaozuan. Does he want to die? The ones who challenged Shaozuan before were all invincible masters who have long been known in the wild starfields of the universe. This person is not well known and is worthy to challenge Qingmu Shaozuan? Qingmu Shaozuan, how can any cat or dog challenge? Everyone present shook their heads. Even the Stardust ruler was anxious and shouted, "Do not abandon your excellency, what are you doing?" At that time, although Jian Wushuang rescued them and killed the person who pursued them, but that person was not the top ultimate master, could it be compared with Qingmu Supreme? As soon as he wanted to go forward to pull Sword Wushuang, he saw that Star Yun stopped him and shook his head. "Stardust, since you do not abandon your lord and do not accept Qingmu Shaozuan, then let him go. Why bother with us?" When saying this, Star Rhythm dominated the eyes, with a touch of irony. Stardust dominated and looked back at her, his expression suddenly stunned. Is this the kind, playful childlike wife he knows? Star Rhyme, what nonsense are you talking about? What is nosy? Don't forget, you will never give up on your excellency, but our benefactor. Taking a deep breath, the Lord of Stardust looked at the Lord of Star Rhyme, as if looking at a stranger. "Xing Yun, I think you've been stunned by that Qingmu Shaozuan." "You!" Xing Yun's master was a little dissatisfied when he heard the words. He opened his mouth and wanted to say something, but when he saw the expression of Stardust's cold gradually, he couldn't help humming his eyes. So many people have challenged Qingmu Shaozuan, and Qingmu Shaozuan did not take them. It will be fine if you do not abandon your excellency, rest assured. The Lord of Stardust heard the words, and a look of hesitation flashed on his face. When he saw Qingmu Shaozuan walking down the platform with the magical halberd, he knew he was unable to stop the battle, and he sighed and said, "I hope so." On the platform, Qingmu Shaozuan looked down at Jian Wushuang and said with no expression, "This seat, no matter who you are or where you come from, you listen well, as usual, you take the 3 strokes of this seat, this I think you win." Jian Wushuang heard a slight glance at him and said, "Hurry up, I'll hurry." "In a hurry?" Qingmu Shaozuan heard the words, and suddenly felt extremely anti-smiling. In this man's eyes, he took the first day of his magnificent and wild wasteland to be proud. "What happened? I see you rushing to death." Qingmu Shaozuan snorted coldly, holding both halberds, fiercely chopped towards the Sword Wushuang. This halberd is the shot of Qingmu Shaozuan with anger, which is even more fierce than the previous might, and directly crushes the void, and the magic phoenix is dancing wildly. However, get ready for the second move. Jian Wushuang raised his eyelids slightly, turned his divine power slightly, and popped a finger gently. Suddenly, the divine power of the avenue horrified, covered on the fingertips of the sword, and flew towards the magical halberd that came from the fury. "Hey!" As if crushing the mountains and the sea with a single finger, the fierce and mighty divine halberd slashed at the Sword Wushuang and gave a scream of screaming and flew out. Qingmu Shaozuan was shocked, and he took 3 steps back and forth to run the whole body of the divine power before he pressed down the huge power uploaded by the magic demon. Suddenly, Qingmu Shaozuan's expression was startled, and he stared at Jian Wushuang tightly for a moment before he said coldly, "No wonder you dare to be so ambitious. It turned out that you have some ability to rely on yourself." After a pause, he continued with a sneer, "However, this halberd just used 30% of his strength just now." 30%? Jian Wushuang shook his head. If this Qingmu Shaozuan knew that he had not used even 1% of his power, how would he feel? Although he is still the master of the realm, whether it is the divine power transformed into the power of the avenue or the supernatural power, it is far from being comparable to the master. Regardless of any invincible master, in the swordless hands, they are just the ants that run to death. Even if it was the 9 kings of the calamity that were recognized as the first in the realm of domination, or the prison dragon that fell from the supreme divine realm, before the sword has no double sides, it cannot take 3 moves, let alone this young herd. The master's divine power and his avenue divine power are not a grade at all. Second move. Qing Mu Shao Zun sighed coldly, no longer suppressing his strength. Invincible Master Xiao broke out for the most. Suddenly, the violent wind rose sharply, roaring and roaring, forming a vortex storm. Standing at the center of the vortex storm, the young priest, like Huang Lingshi, is not visible. Mystery, punishment. Boom! In an instant, the platinum-colored magic demon halberd in his hands suddenly changed. Fine vein-like fine lines covered the halberd. Qingmu Shaozuan stabbed into the sky fiercely. He actually guided the strength of the heavens and earth directly and descended countless shunlei. In the end, these gods' thunder fell on the magical halberds one after another, forming a horror thunderbolt similar to Taigua Thunder Dragon. When everyone around him saw this, they were shocked. It turns out that this is the true strength of Qing Mu Shao Zun. The true strength of Qing Mu Shao Zun is so horrible. It seems that Qing Mu Shaozuan has moved a real fire. This mask is dead. Stardust dominated when he saw this. His face was suddenly anxious, and he shouted continuously to let the sword unparalleled. And that star rhyme dominated. His expression flashed under the instant worry about Jian Wushuang, which turned into a deeper worship of Qing Mu Shaozun. My husband, it would be great if they were such strong men. She envies secretly. Go to hell. Qing Mu Shaozun sneered. Boom. Suddenly, this horrible of thunder, carrying the power of destroying the world, blasted towards the sword Wushuang. Get ready for the third move. However, Jian Wushuang's expression was still light, and he was just throwing his sleeves in the face of the horrifying thunder that made everyone scream. In this sleeve, the cloud and wind are extremely light, and no power can be seen, but it is vaguely felt, as if this sleeve throws out mountains, water, all things, and nature. Alas! This horror thunder hits the swordless, sleeveless robe, just like a stone dripping on the water surface, ripples. Next moment, this godly thunder was even pumped away, and one turned at a faster speed, with more terrifying power, and hit Qing Mu Shaozuan. How can it be? Qing Mu Shaozuan's complexion changed instantly, and he wanted to resist it. However, this god of thunder directly destroyed the dead, and hit Qing Mu Shaozuan's chest. Huh! The horrible might broke out, and a huge turbid mushroom cloud rose over Nansha Island. Cough, cough. In the huge mushroom cloud, the uncomfortable coughing sound of Qing Mu Shaozun was sounded. Immediately, everyone saw the original Feng Shin Yu Lang, such as the Ling Qin and the glorious Qing Mu Shaozun. But at this moment, he was like a falling from earth. His black hair was blown up all over, his clothes were fragmented, his black chest was exposed, and his wolf was trembling to the extreme. Suddenly, the whole audience froze and fell into petrification. Chapter 4360. Damn! The next moment, Qing Mu Supreme swept up from the ground and looked at Jian Wushuang hardly. His face was extremely blue. From an early age, he is the proud of heaven, the beloved of heaven and earth, and his practice is smooth and smooth. Born with the fruit and fruit, if you go out casually, you will get the blood of the magic phoenix. Even if you break through a realm, you can make the ultimate arrogant to recognize the Lord. No matter where he went, he was only praised and admired by him. Because of all kinds of encounters, he became extremely arrogant. He was so arrogant that he believed that the entire universe, as long as it was below the Supreme, no one was his opponent. Even the rumored sword was cut to the extreme, and he was named the sword's first talent in the world, but only slightly into his eyes. Today, however, he was easily defeated by a masked man who didn't know where to come from. This pride and arrogance that he has developed for tens of millions of years was trampled under his feet, crushed and trampled down. This is an embarrassment never before. A fierce anger raged on his chest, and he wanted to burn him. Next moment, damn it, you it. Qingmu Shaozuan twisted the blood vessels on his forehead and growled, "Magic Phoenix changes." Boom! Suddenly, his blood was boiling all over his body, and a mysterious rune emerged from the body. Hey! Immediately afterwards, a pair of flame-shaped wings spread out on his back, 10 feet wide. At his neck, 8 more heads were twisted to give birth. The Magic Phoenix is a branch of the Phoenix family. It has 9 heads and is extremely powerful. The awakening of the bloodline is still continuing, and more horrible changes are constantly being made on Qingmu Shaozuan. Suddenly, are you performing acrobatics? Jian Wushuang glanced at him lightly, stretched out his right hand in the direction of him, and spread his 5 fingers slowly. If this Qingmu Shaozuan is really the demon phoenix, his sword Unparalleled is also interested in seeing 1 or 2, but the result is just a half-human and half-phoenix monster, and he naturally does not want to waste time. He had slaughtered the real dragons, not to mention this defective product. Come on. Jian Wushuang 5 fingers slammed into the void. Suddenly, she was immersed in the transformation, and the young man of Qingmu, who had various gorgeous changes in the divine body, seemed to be holding his throat by the invisible big hand. What is this? Qingmu Shaozuan struggled. He felt that grasping his divine power seemed to be in harmony with heaven and earth. The power of his demon phoenix after his awakening could not remove the power of this avenue at all. The next moment he saw that Jian Wushuang grabbed his neck and lifted it, as if he was holding a chick. You, let go of me. Qingmu Shaozuan's sword Wushuang held his right hand in the void, his wings fluttered on his back, and his hands and feet kicked wildly, angrily to the extreme. He still has no magic power at the bottom of the box. He has not really awakened the state of the Magic Phoenix, and as a result he was caught in the hands of Jian Wushuang, and he was unwilling to the extreme. His Excellency, 3 moves have passed, you lost. Jian Wushuang let go of his hand, shook his head and said lightly. Having said that, Jian Wushuang no longer cares about him, and walks towards the soil on the high platform. For today's Jian Wushuang, only the Supreme can he really awaken his spirit. As for these masters, he has no interest in slaughter. This Qingmu Shaozuan arrogant and powerful, but in his opinion, it is just a frog at the bottom of the well that has never been to the depths of the universe. Unconsciously, the audience was extremely dead. Everyone stared at Jian Wushuang blankly, all eyes were shocked to fall down, and their mouths could be opened to put an egg. Qingmu Shao lost? The invincible barren land is invincible and has the title of Young Respect. Qingmu Young Respect, who was given the son of the choice, is so defeated. They stared at Jian Wushuang stunned. From beginning to end, Jian Wushuang was just a finger, a sleeve, and a grab. Anyone could see it. Jian Wushuang was obviously easy to deal with and was quite capable. The star rhyme dominated his expression with a dull expression. He couldn't seem to believe the fact and said chaotically in his mouth, "Impossible, absolutely impossible." Qingmu Shaozuan, however, is invincible and cannot be defeated. Silhouette me. Jian Wushuang swept to the high platform, watching the Wind family owner said. The Wind family owner heard a tremble in his heart, and there was an embarrassment on his face. Everyone knows that this soil has long been the thing that Qingmu Shaozuan has decided. The so-called rules and tests are only a form for Qingmu Shaozuan. However, the Wind family owner did not expect that Jian Wushuang, an uninvited guest, was killed halfway and easily defeated Qingmu Shaozuan. If he offered him this way, he would undoubtedly offend the youth. There is more than one young priest in the Qing family. That is the supreme power that truly has the supreme power. I said at last, give it to me. Jian Wushuang saw the cold in his eyes, and his eyes flashed away. Suddenly, the owner of the Wind family only felt a big terror between life and death, and he was trembling. He didn't dare to hesitate anymore, and he trembled and offered the soil. Sword Wushuo took the soil, and a smile appeared on his face unconsciously. The congenital 5 elements of qi finally collected successfully. It's time to really start the bronze ancient tripod. Jian Wushuang's heart was full of thoughts, and speaking, he was also looking forward to what the bronze ancient tripod would look like after the 5 elements were completed. However, he didn't notice the distant Qingmu Shaozuan. His face was already gloomy to the extreme. He clenched his fists tightly, a wave of humiliation turned into a violent murder, and he was stirred in the chest. This person can never be the master. No master in the universe can defeat me. This person must be supreme. Only the supreme will be far superior to me. Qingmu Shaozun's murderous flashes, and his arrogant arrogance, he will never admit that in this world, someone who can dominate the realm can defeat him. He Qingmu Shaozuan, the protagonist of this universe, is the darling of heaven and earth. How could he be defeated? Just when Jian Wushuang was about to pick up and was about to leave Tianhuang Star Field, he couldn't hold back anymore, shattered his waist bag, and shouted with a distorted expression, "What about the Supreme? The Supreme must not shame me. Please, ancestors." Boom! The voice fell, and in the middle of Tianhuang Starfield, a white-haired old man suddenly opened his eyes and patted him directly across the distance. The speed of this palm reached the extreme, blinking in 1,000 miles, the mighty and constantly growing, finally covering the sky and pressing hard against the sword unparalleled. Suddenly, the Nansha Islands were torn apart, and the surrounding sea set off thousands of waves, and numerous seawater rolled up, connecting heaven and earth, forming a turbulent water column. Everyone on the island was scattered as birds and beasts, terrified. The sword, which had already been swept to the sky. Her pupils shrank instantly. Extreme. At the next moment, the power of Jian Wushuang's whole body exploded, turning into countless sword gas interweaves, forming a palm, and heading towards that mighty one, causing the supreme capsized heaven and earth to collide away. Chapter 4361. Huh! These 2 palms are like the 2 sides colliding together, constantly rubbing and colliding, making a sound of destruction. Boom, boom, boom. Countless horrible forces overflowed, exploded in the air, and blew up hundreds of feet. The Nansha Islands are directly torn apart, and numerous seawater roars and rolls up, forming a huge wave, just like a flood monster opening his mouth to bite. In just a moment, the Nansha Islands were flooded, as if they were in chaos. All this seems to be a long time, but in one breath, after the 2 giant palms collided, they disappeared. Jian Wushuang hunted in black, with black hair flying, and stepped back, depressing the horrible supreme power from his hand. Extreme. Jian Wu's eyes were cold, his eyes were looking towards the place where the giant palm came. There, a white-haired old man was walking slowly. Every step he took seemed to be ordinary, but it seemed as if he was stepping on a node in space, and it directly spanned thousands of miles. For 3 consecutive steps, he stood in front of Jian Wushuang. This person, who is one of the directors of the Tianhuang Star Field, is the Qing family's ancestor Qinghe Supreme. Qinghe Supreme, 200 chaos before the achievement of the supreme position, 100 chaos epochs, breaking through the medium supreme, although it is not a high supreme, but the same strength. Sir, it's not appropriate to bully a junior, isn't it? Qinghe Supreme had white hair, and looked at Jian Wushuang's eyes up and down. The sword has no expression on both sides, and now he is supreme again. Even if he doesn't use the sword too much, he has no fear in his heart. The only thing he was slightly worried about was revealing his identity. But looking at it like this, it seems that Qinghe Supreme has considered him supreme. After Jian Wushuang thought a little, he understood the cause and effect relationship. Under the role of the antelope mask, he was covered with breath, and the Supreme could not see his depth. It is normal to see through his cultivation. Thought of this, Jian Wushuang no longer feared in the heart. This seat does not kill him, it is already in the face of your Supreme Master Qinghe. Jian Wushuang said hoarsely. He knew that since Qinghe Supreme had mistaken him as Supreme, he might as well just pretend to the end. Then, Your Excellency, said the old man, would like to thank you? Qinghe Supreme closed his eyes. You can understand this. Jian Wushuang nodded indifferently. The Qinghe Supreme heard the words, and suddenly couldn't help laughing out loud as if he heard something funny. Sir, you deceived my people and made them my treasure. Would you like to thank your husband? It's the biggest joke in the world. At the same time, I saw that Qingmu Shaozuan stepped forward. First, respectfully, Qinghe Shaozuan made a ritual. Then he turned his eyes and looked at Jian Wushuang fiercely. Our ancestor, it was this man who robbed me of my soil, wounded me, and humiliated me in front of everyone. My ancestor, you must decide for me, punish this person severely, you must not let him leave. Jian Wushuang heard the words, his expression gradually became colder. He looked at Qinghe Supreme and said, Qinghe, are you going to stop this seat now? I saw that Qinghe Supreme touched the head of Qingmu Shaozuan first, and let him go to the side first, and then he smiled and said, Sir, you and I are both supreme. If you want to go, you can of course, but you have to return the old man's grandson's soul to him before leaving. His interest. Jian Wushuang heard the words, and couldn't help laughing. His voice was cold. Let us not say that this land is not his, even if it is his, this seat is taken, what can you do? The words fell, Jian Wushuang's divine power was surging, and he could not stop looking at Qinghe Supreme, and he was overbearing to the extreme. I don't know why. Qinghe Supreme's face froze for a moment, then sneered, Then you have to see if you have this strength. Boom! He grabbed his right hand into the void, directly grabbed a black 7-star magic knife, and hacked at the sword unparalleled. This knife may seem random, but after splitting it, it turned out to be a myriad of energy howls. All kinds of laws were derived, stuffed between heaven and earth. For a moment, the entire sky was filled with this sword. On the sea of the Nansha Islands, many dominated the water and stood on the water. Looking at the congested world, it shook the world. This is the power of Supreme. With Qinghe Supreme shot, this masked man is afraid to escape in danger. Not necessarily. You didn't hear Qinghe Supreme just now. This masked person is also supreme. Everyone discussed. Among the crowd, the Stardust dominated the weird expression for a while. He remembered that when Jian Wushuang rescued them 5,000 years ago, the cultivation revealed that there was only the ultimate dominating realm. Could it be that Your Excellency broke through in these 5,000 years? Stardust dominated a look of doubt. The star rhyme standing next to him, after a moment of stagnation in his expression, suddenly said sourly, No wonder he can defeat Qingmu Shaozun. It turned out to be the supreme. What a skill to bully and small. To shut up. When the Stardust Master heard this, his face suddenly changed and he snapped sharply, Extreme behavior, should I wait to be speculative? What's more www.novel. Don't abandon Your Excellency or our life-saving benefactor. Star rhyme, if I hear you dare to stigmatize your abandonment again, I will blame me for breaking with you and breaking the affair. After speaking, he didn't care what the expression of the Star Dominion was. He turned his head to look at Jian Wushuang again, and anxiety appeared on his face. Over 9 days. Jian Wushuang looked at this as a practice, like the dark blade of a star river, and sneered, Extreme power, but so. He flipped his right hand, and Wu Weiss Excalibur appeared in his hand. Chopper Star. Instantly, countless energy condensed in the sword without hands, forming a sword rainbow of nearly 5,000 feet. This time, the star strength Jianhong, evoked by the power of the avenue, no longer appears silver, but is dazzling to the extreme, turning into blue. With his ascension, the power of the sword-cutting sword art is naturally incomparable, too much stronger than in the past. Cut! Jian Wushuang drank, 5,000 zhang Jianhong immediately chopped down, and the dark collision that turned into a perfect match. With a blast, the sword unveiled and stepped forward, bullying into it. Arrogant. Qinghe Supreme eyes flickered, and stepped directly in front of it. Extreme divine art, Feng Tianjia. Click. The knives are densely packed with air, overlapping and intertwining with each other, turning into a net, blocking the sword's unparalleled path. Open the sky! Open heaven! Open heaven! The sword unparalleled cut 3 swords in succession, and each sword cut was full of the charm of the avenue. The Kaitian Genmeng, which was blessed by the power of the avenue, became more sharp and sharp, tearing the knife net directly. Kill! Sword unparalleled step forward, and Qinghe Supreme against thousands of moves. For the fastest update without error reading, please visit. Chapter 4362. The swords add up, a series of Mars splashes, and the horrible energy overflow keeps blasting away, making the whole sky star field bang. The magic power of the avenue of tens of thousands of times in Jian Wushuang has not been retained at all, and it is tilted out of the hand like a splash of mountains and rivers, which directly forms a violent storm composed of sword gas and bombarded. Okay, keep going. Jian Wushuang felt the majestic power from the 7-star magic blade in the hands of Qinghe Supreme, and his warfare surged to the extreme. He laughed aloud, arrogant, and the Wu-weeping sword offensive in his hand became even more violent. It's been too long since Jian Wushuang fought a battle with the prisoner dragon in Xingkonglu. He has never encountered such a lively battle. Fighting in the past is not too much worse than him, and can be crushed with a finger, or it is the supreme divine realm, which can only be slaughtered with the strength of the Taro Excalibur. Arrogant. Qinghe Supreme felt the sharp force from the blade, his face became more gloomy. This power is not the supreme divine power, nor is it the dominant power, but the power of the avenue that has been sublimated as much as possible. The power of the road is a strange power that some supreme have not yet realized. In the universe, swords are used to enlighten the Tao. There are not many who ask for supremacy, and even fewer who have learned the power of the avenue. Which one will this person be? Qinghe Supreme's eyes flickered. While fighting against Jian Wushuang, the mountains and seas overturned, Shenzhou Lu Shen, and quickly thought in his heart. The words, sword warrior sword, flashed in his mind, but was quickly crossed by him automatically. Sword warrior sword did not fake, but sword warrior sword did not dominate the realm, although it had also beheaded the supreme, but it all depended the power of the tailored Excalibur would not be so powerful. Supreme God, 7 waves. Qinghe Supreme watched Jian Wushuang rushing towards him, and drank again. The 7-star magic sword in his hand suddenly changed. I saw the 7-star beads inlaid on the blade of the magic knife gradually light up. Each one lights up. The power of the 7-star magic knife is stronger. Cut! Qinghe Supreme opened his mouth coldly, and lifted his sword towards the sword and unparalleled. The sword has 2 swords to block, and the tiger's mouth can't help but hemp. This sword is twice as powerful as the power generated by Qinghe Supreme, who just shot with all his strength. This is not over yet. Qinghe Supreme stepped into the void, and the 7-star magic knife was cut again. Second knife. Third knife. The 4th knife. When Qinghe Supreme cut the 5th knife, Wei Ning suddenly increased 5 times. Jian Wushuang couldn't stand it anymore. He was cut off by Qinghe Supreme, and slammed into the deep sea, setting off waves of waves and triggering a tsunami. Old ancestor! Kill him! Seeing this, Qingmu Shaozuan suddenly shouted, a rush of joy on his face. He looked at the place where Jian Shoushuang fell, and there was a hint of cruelty on his face. What about you, Supreme? I am Qingmu Shaozuan, who is the protagonist of this era, who has the best luck in this world. Deep in the ocean floor, Jian Wu's eyes twinkled. He is not incapable of dealing with the 7 waves of divine magic, as long as he can use the divine body, or the night sword and the daybreak sword technique. He can easily break it, but in that case, there will inevitably be exposed risks. Well, it's time to try your power. Jian Wushuang's body sank quickly, his right hand turned over, and a bronze ancient tripod appeared in his hand. On this bronze ancient ding-ding body, there are towering giant trees spreading branches, flames spreading, forming lines, and sharp gold color imprinting the whole body. and even more torrential water flows freely. In the past 10,000 years, he continued to refine the ancient bronze dings, and finally completely refined the ancient bronze dings. Now he can not only control the bronze ancient tripod perfectly, but also attack the innate 5 elements of the ancient bronze tripod. When Jianwu stepped on his feet, he suddenly blasted a large pit in the deep sea, and the whole man burst into the air, breaking the sea. Go with! Jian Wushuang's right hand was pushed fiercely, and the bronze ancient dinger spun down suddenly, making a sound like the beginning of the Chaos Avenue in the universe, hitting Qinghe Supreme. And that Qinghe Supreme, the 7th sword, has been cut off. This knife eclipses heaven and earth, and the sun and moon are dim. If it is in the cosmic starry sky, it is enough to split several stars directly into nothingness. Immediately, you saw the intersection of the knife and the knife. At this moment, the world turned into a dead silence, and all the sound waves were overwhelmed by the explosion of the two. Immediately afterwards, a horrifying scene took place. With an entire territory of hundreds of millions of miles, in the universe's wildest starfield, the largest starfield in the wild, it broke open numerous void cracks at the same time. The land here is crushed into nothingness. I don't know how many innocent people have been hit and killed by this shock wave. Boom boom. A storm is brewing, and the world is in a short darkness. Extreme fights, every day is devastating. Immediately he saw the bronze ancient tripod rushing out of the explosion center, and he didn't wait for Qinghe Supreme to slash the 7th sword and hit him on the chest of Qinghe Supreme. Puff! Suddenly, Qinghe Supreme deity cracked for a while, and a yellow wax flashed on his face. He then took 100 steps back to unload the great power from the bronze ancient tripod. The bronze ancient tripod turned back and returned to the sword without hands. Jian Wushuang narrowed his eyes and said hoarsely, "Qinghe, do you want to stop this seat now?" Qinghe Supreme's complexion was cloudy. He stared at the bronze ancient tripod in Jianwu's hands, and there was a thick dread in his eyes. This tripod, vaguely, he seems to have seen this bronze ancient tripod on any record, but the time is too long, he does not remember it carefully, and the ancient tripod lacks a foot, and the universe in his impression Chongbao also looks a little different, making him uncertain. The next moment, he took a deep breath and replied coldly, "Your lord is awesome, but it's a bit naive to want to leave because of this." After finishing, he turned his head sharply and looked at a void, said, "Extreme Lieutenant Supreme, Biming Supreme, I and the other 3 families have lost their teeth, and when facing the adversary, they will advance and retreat together. When do you see?" The voice fell, and saw the void in which Qinghe Supreme looked, suddenly twisting. Immediately, in a light sigh, the 2 Supremes stepped out of the void. The name on the left was covered with cold, and he stepped down 1 step, forming ice directly on his feet, and a trace of frost hanging on his eyebrows. It was the old ancestor of Beijia, the Supreme Biming. And the one on the right is a man wearing a soiled robe full of stains and looks as thin as an old beggar on the street. Blind old man. This person is the ancestor of Liejia, one of the 3 major families. At the same time, he is also the highest of the 3 Supremes, who has been promoted to the Supreme for many years. Chapter 4363. After the 2 Supremes stepped out, they were like the Dingfengzi who set down the storm. The mountains and rivers overturned were calm. Beijing's ancestor Biming Supreme. Liejia's ancestor Liejua Extreme. Suddenly, everyone shook. 3 Supreme. What kind of line is this? I remember the last time that the 3 Supremes of the heavenly stars were all together, but before the 3 Chaos period, Jiodi Pavilion wanted to establish a branch in the heavenly stars. Unexpectedly, this masked person has attracted the 3 Supremes. Now, no matter who this masked person is, I'm afraid he will die. Immediately, everyone quickly discussed. And the stardust dominated, and his heart tightened instantly. When he wanted to speak, he saw the elders of Tianjianzong standing in front of him, holding his shoulders with a serious expression. Stardust, My husband looks, it turns out that you have an old relationship with this masked man, and you just talked for him before, but now, if you don't want to bring us Tianjianzong's great disaster, you will immediately cut off all relations with him. Stardust dominated when Yan's face slightly changed, and gritted his teeth and explained, Uncle, don't give up on your life once saved me. Also, please take a shot and stop this fight. The elder Jinzong gave him a glance that day, and snorted coldly, You really deserve me, Master Shi. I am invincible, but where is the right to stop the supreme war? Furthermore, Mo said he just saved your life, even if he saved the entire Tianjinzong, and now he is in great trouble, and we will not repay him, we will already be the biggest reward. The Stardust Master wants to say more, and then sees the nearby Star Rhythm Master pulled him and said, Stardust, you just listen to Master Shi, don't give yourself trouble. Stardust dominated when Yan's face hesitated for a moment or two, then immediately lowered his head and sighed. Over 9 days, the three Supremes stood side by side. Standing on the left, Baiming Supreme with a frost on his frown sighed and said, Sir, you and I are the Supreme of the universe. It's not easy to get to this step. It's just a patch of soil, so why wait? Life and death? After a pause, Baiming Supreme continued to say, Sir, the old man assures you, as long as you put down the soil, you can leave at any time. We will never stop it. After he finished speaking, the three Supreme Masters all stared at Jian Wushuang, waiting for Jian Wushuang's answer. Swordless pair of petals was empty, his expression was gloomy. If only Qinghe Supreme is okay, his sword is unshakable, but it is a bit tricky for the three Supremes to come together. In particular, the blind old man was fiercely enshrined, and the threat he brought to him was even more horrible than the sum of these two supreme sums. Even if Jian Wushuang achieved a breakthrough, no matter how powerful he was, he would not be the opponent of the three great sums. If in the past, Jian Wushuang might have really given up and left, after all, in this world, it is not only here that there is congenital aura of soil, and it is a big deal to find it. However, the cosmic race of the universe is about to start. At that time, all the nations will arrive, and his sword is inevitable, and he can only confront those top forces again. Therefore, as long as he intensively improves his strength during this period, he will not be able to protect himself but also the Jedi to counterattack after the end of the universe race. This piece of soil cannot be allowed. Thinking of this, Jian Wushuang raised his head and looked faintly at these three Supremes, saying indifferently, What if I refuse to let this piece of soil? The words came to an end, and the audience was shocked. Everyone did not expect that under the pressure exerted by the three Supreme Masters, Jian Wushuang still behaved his own way and dedicated himself. Sir, do you think clearly? Baiming Supreme sighed again, and seemed to be sorry for Jian Wushuang's decision. Baiming, tell him so much for what? Kill it. That Qinghe Supreme laughed angrily, and the 7-star magic knife appeared in his hand again, scoring a black brilliance. Also, Baiming Supreme shook his head, and no longer said, a ray of frost attached to his arm. Next moment, kill! Qinghe Supreme waved his right hand. In a flash, the 7-star magic knife in his hand turned into a pair of exercises again. After splitting it, it was like Tianhe rolled up, and as if chaos had begun to open, the entire Tianhuang star field was occupied by this knife. Under this sword, heaven and earth seemed to be trained into a front line, and all the light was lost in everyone's eyes. And that Baiming Supreme is a 5-finger grab, and the entire South China Sea boiled instantly, the whole sea of hundreds of millions of tons of water rolled up, turned up against the current, and fluttered towards the sword without a match. The whole sea and the sea are all hanging high in the sky. What a shocking picture. Seal! Baiming Supreme sighed softly. Suddenly, the sky was hanging upside down, and the endless seawater shot towards swordless warriors were frozen and turned into millions of miles of snow. The entire star field is directly transformed into a snow and ice world. Extreme power changed the world every day. The strongest, Lai Sun, has been in a state of contemplation after looking at Jian Wushuang attentively, frowning slightly, and not thinking about what to do. Good job. Jian Wushuang's eyes narrowed, and his eyes burst into 3 inches. Facing the force of the extinct Swordsman and ice-scratching force, he struck his right foot hard, and the whole man rose into the sky. Immediately, a bronze ancient tripod appeared in his hands. Jian Wushuang took a deep breath, looked down at the bronze ancient tripod in his hand, and muttered to himself, "Release the true glory." Innate fire burned. Boom! Suddenly, the bronze ancient tripod trembled frantically, and the flame rune on the tripod shone loudly. A horrible and hot breath that could not be described in any words radiated from Gu Ding. Next moment, call! A magenta flame blasted out suddenly from the bronze ancient tripod. In just a moment, this monstrous flame emanated, covering millions of miles of territory, directly destroying the insulted sword blade and the thousands of miles of ice. Flame overwhelming flames. The eyes are the flames, the sun and the moon are the flames. The entire sky star field instantly turned into a flame dome. This is the fire that burns the sky. Between the two, it seems that it is not an order of magnitude at all, whether it is the destruction of the world and the annihilation of the world that has caused Shenzhou's land to sink, or the mobilization of water in the sea and the transformation into ice and snow. After this flame, they were all crushed and collapsed. At this moment, everyone was stunned, all looked up at Jian Wushuang, staring at each other. I saw standing in the middle of the flame, holding a bronze wooden sword, unparalleled, like the Lord of Fire, the God of Arson, who dominated the flame. And that flame, after breaking the 2 supremes, continued to attack the 3 supremes in an extremely overbearing posture. Suddenly, Qinghe Supreme and Baiming Supreme shook with anger, and there was a look of anger in their eyes. Chapter 4364. It is rare to be able to mobilize the innate aura of fire. Only the blind old man, wearing a shabby robe, with a thin build, returned to normal after a look of surprise. He stepped out 1 step, and a great amount of divine power poured out between his hands, turning into a mask to protect the 3. Pentium came all the way innate Dinghua, beating on this mask, but actually made a continuous snoring noise, and for a moment, there was no way to take this golden mask. The congenital Dinghua burned this mask before it melted and burned a layer, and more supreme divine power poured out to prevent the erosion of the congenital Dinghua gas. Okay. Jian Wushuang's eyes narrowed, and there was a slight resignation in his eyes. He wanted to make a slap in the air and use the instinct of Dinghua to burn these 2 supremes, but now, it seems that the supreme martyr has shot, and the power is worse. However, the sword is unparalleled and discouraged. This bronze ancient tripod has not yet awakened. It already has the power to kill the supreme. Once the perfect innate aura of 5 elements is collected, the changes of the 5 elements act as chaos. This bronze ancient tripod will truly produce a qualitative leap. I can't kill them. But... Jian Wu's eyes twisted slightly, looking at the frightened side to Qingmu Shaozuan, sneer, go with. Suddenly, in the endless instinct of Dinghua Qi, a fire snake was suddenly set off and rushed towards Qingmu Shaozuan. His sword is unparalleled in his life, but it doesn't mean that he can let anyone use his soft persimmons at will. This Qingmu Shaozuan threatened twice that his sword is unparalleled, and sword unparalleled had already killed him. The fire is surging. Qingmu Shaozuan looked at the fuchsia fire snake that rushed at him, and he was frightened by 2 wars, his face horrified. You dignified, what kind of skill is it to kill me as a master? If you have the courage, then bring down the cultivation to the master. How about fighting with me? Qingmu Shaozuan first glanced at Qinghe Supreme, the old ancestor at home, and then shouted hard. The frog at the bottom of the well. Jian Wushuang shook his head, disdained to talk to him at all. When that Qinghe Supreme saw this scene, the raging Chao Jian Wushuang roared, if you kill Qingmu, my Qing family will never die without you. He hasn't finished talking yet. Congenital Dinghua Qi immediately rapped Qingmu Shaozuan. Right, because there is no left to me. Suddenly, in the inborn fire, there was a terrible scream from Qingmu Shaozuan. However, only in a short time, the tragic sound came to an abrupt end, and Qingmu Shaozuan disappeared into the ashes. In an instant, the audience turned into a dead silence. In the wild wilderness of the universe, Qingmu Shaozuan, who is revered by many people and has the title of the Son of Choice, has fallen. Seeing this scene, Qinghe Supreme felt that his heart was bleeding and his expression was distorted to the extreme. Everyone doesn't know what Qingmu Shaozuan is supposed to accompany with the natural fruit and the possession of the atmosphere, but it is his Qinghe Supreme that operates behind the scenes. The Tao fruit was put down by him, and he got the blood of the demon phoenix, which he asked for at a great cost to the demon phoenix family. Even the demon halberd he pulled down his old face and promised countless benefits to the supreme old friend. Come. All he does is to create an invincible heart for Qingmu Shaozuan from below, so that he can firmly believe in the path of spiritual practice, cut his thorns and break through the supreme. However, with this fire, the pains that he spent countless costs and countless hours were all destroyed. This makes Qinghe Supreme instantly crazy. Ah! Whoever you are, this life and this world, I Qinghe will slaughter you all the door, slap your whole family, and let you enjoy the world's greatest pain and torture. Qinghe Extreme growled. It's up to you? Jian Wushuang sneered and then said, I'm leaving today and no one of you can keep it. The words fell, Jian Wushuang stepped on his feet, and suddenly blasted towards the sky outside the starry sky. The endless flame was retrieved by the sword unparalleled, as if the sword had returned to the sheath and re-entered the bronze ancient tripod. I saw the innate Dinghua return to the bronze ancient tripod, the entire South China Sea disappeared, and the original hundreds of millions of tons of frozen seawater were all evaporated, and the entire sea became an endless pit. The sky is full of water vapor after seawater evaporates, which makes it hard to see. Want to run? The fierce brow frowned, and then said coldly, the old man has to see, who are you, the hidden mouse? Tiantong open? I saw Lai Sun's right hand swiping into his eyes. Originally, only the white eyes suddenly lit up endless redness. In this view, the sword that has radiated far away Wushuang seems to be seen through immediately, whether it is cultivated in the realm or the true appearance, it is seen through. The next moment, Lai Sun's body shook, and his original complexion suddenly changed, and he suddenly lost his voice. He is the master. As soon as the sentence came to an end, everyone was shocked, as if a bomb had been dropped, and everyone was uproaring. What? Dominate the realm? Dominate the supreme? Did you make a mistake? Defeating Qingmu Shaozuan, the masked man who has crushed Qinghe and Baiming Supreme, and has dealt with the three supremes for so long, just dominates the realm. In the universe, is there such a strong master? At this moment, everyone was crazy, and their eyes were horrified and fell down, terrifying. However, this is not the end. Relief Supreme continued to say, if there is nothing wrong with this seat, he is a sword unparalleled. Boom! With this voice falling, it is tantamount to dropping a blockbuster in everyone's heart again, setting off a stormy sea. The Baiming Supreme and the Qinghe Supreme, who had already changed their faces, were trembling again and did not dare to channel, what? He is swordless. The next moment, the three looked at each other, and their faces were full of ecstasy. Ha! The sword unparalleled that the whole universe is looking for has been found by us. There was a strong greed in the eyes of the three. Jian Wushuang, the famous 3 words in the universe. Only killing Jian Wushuang will get the identity of a disciple of the dragon tribe, and also enjoy the eternal blessing of the dragon tribe. In addition, there are rewards from 4 other top powers, such as billions of cosmic source stones, such as 5-star domain resources and so on. In addition, there is also the Terra Excalibur that is coveted by all races. That is the invincible treasure of the truly famous universe. Including the bronze ancient tripod used by Jian Wushuang just now, it is obviously equally extraordinary, it is far beyond the existence of the universe treasure. There are too many benefits. Thinking of this, The three supremes are crazy. Catch up and kill Swordsman. Huh? The three of them stepped on their feet, all erupting into the supreme divine power of the whole body, and blasting towards the sword unparalleled. Chapter 4365. Damn. Jian Wushuang turned his head to look at the three supreme masters, and his expression was somber that he could drip water. He counted so many things, but did not expect that the Lai Ling Supreme had a pair of eyes that could see through the world's delusions and look directly at the essence. Now, he wants to hide his identity again, for fear it is impossible. Also, since you like chasing, I will give you a big gift. Jian Wushuang reached out and touched the hilt of the tailored Excalibur sword hidden behind the black robe, and a corner of his mouth evoked a cold smile. Call out. The next moment, Jian Wushuang stepped on his feet and blasted towards the outer sky. Ha ha ha, sword unparalleled, you come to the door yourself, still want to escape now? The three supremes looked at each other and laughed. At this moment, even Qinghe Supreme, who had just experienced the pain of losing his grandson, had long forgotten the pain, and all that remained was the greed for Jian Wushuang's rewards and the treasures on Jian Wushuang's own body. The three followed closely behind, and soon disappeared into the sky star field. Nansha Island. Everyone looked at the four-sword Wushuang who left, their mouths widened, and they could not return to God for a long time. It wasn't until a long time before I heard a spitting sound. Have you heard that? Lai Ling Supreme said just now that the masked man is Swordsman. I heard that Jian Wushuang did not become strong because of the Tai Luo Excalibur. He had just shaken the three supremes without using the Tai Luo Excalibur at all. It seems that the strength of Jian Wushuang is seriously underestimated in the universe. I also said before that Qingmu Shaozuan could definitely defeat Jian Wushuang easily. Now it seems that my eyelids are too shallow and the frog at the bottom of the well. Someone said that Qingmu Shaozuan, the master who was able to crush Jian Wushuang, said with a bitter smile. Jian Wushuang is the true first day of the world, overwhelming contemporaries. Qingmu Shaozun, farther away. More people looked at Jian Wushuang's disappearing back, his eyes awed and envious. Everyone is the ultimate dominator. However, Jian Wushuang's strength is already different from them. Only at this moment did they believe that there is really more than the realm of in the universe, and they can shake the supreme existence. The other side of the Spratly Islands. Star Rhythm dominated the goddess. Before Jian Wushuang defeated Qingmu Shaozun, she also thought that it was only Jian Wushuang fighting for cultivation to bully the junior. Until now, she knew Jian Wushuang was also the ultimate dominating realm. His invincible fantasy and worship suddenly shattered. It turns out that he's the sword unparalleled. The star rhyme murmured to himself. Xing Yun, that Qingmu Shaozuan compares with Jian Wushuang, just like the pearl of rice grain is better than Haoyue. You have no eyes. Stardust sighed next to him, and immediately looked at the place where Jian Wushuang disappeared. Just like your husband. Starfield outside the domain. Sword warriors turned into a slash, galloping forward. The three supreme supremacy of Liu, Qinghe and Baiming also turned into meteors, followed closely by them. Relief. If we are in a hurry with the kid, Jian Wushuang, he will definitely use the Taro Excalibur, and you will stop him by then. Qinghe Supreme eye blinked. Lai Ling Supreme nodded and replied with a sneer. It is well known that Jian Wushuang uses the Taro Excalibur, but it has only one blow. When this happens, the block will be blocked by a death charm. After speaking, he right-handedly, and suddenly a scarecrow with the same appearance appeared in his hand. A yellow note was stuck on the scarecrow's forehead, enough to block a fatal blow for him. It is precisely because of this existence of the dead scarecrow that the three of them dared to pursue the sword without any worries. Qinghe Extreme saw this and immediately smiled, and then looked at Jian Wushuang and shouted. The sword, unparalleled thief, quickly grabbed his hands and surrendered the Tai Luo Excalibur and the bronze ancient tripod. This seat spares you. Jian Wushuang heard the words, looked at Qinghe Supreme with a kind of look at the idiot, and then said nothing, and flew towards the front again. He remembered that it was not far from the Tianhuang star field, and there was a retrospective place. The retrospective place was perennially confused in time and space, and the void was broken, which was convenient for him to use all kinds of killers. The little thief, Jian Wushuang, is leading us back to the land. All three of Lai Chan are supreme of the universe. Naturally, they are not stupid people, but after a little thought, they guessed the intention of Jian Wushuang. This little thief's escape route is exactly what I intended, where the sword Wushuang was killed, and the remaining divine power fluctuations will immediately disturb the void storm. No one will know that it was we who killed Jian Wushuang. Taro Excalibur. As a result, each side of the horse and the other had their own misfortunes, and they all approached the place of retrospection with a tacit understanding. After Sangxiangxiang, a vortex land composed of numerous star fragments and cosmic meteorite appeared in front of Jian Wushuang. Jian Wu's footsteps stopped abruptly, and he turned his head to look at faintly to the three supremes. At the same time, Jian Wushuang was thinking quickly about the countermeasures in his mind. Among these three supremes, the Supreme Martyr is the strongest, followed by the medium Supreme Qinghe Supreme, and the weakest is the Baiming Supreme. His sword Wushuang wants to escape hunting, then he has to find a way to one of the supremes in an instant, otherwise, once the three supremes join forces with Buffa, even if he has a Taro Excalibur, I'm afraid there is only the way to defeat you can choose. If you use the Tai Luo Excalibur, kill Lieutenant Supreme first, then the risk is too great, it is very likely that you will not be able to kill it. Instead, you will be killed by the other two supremes while taking advantage of this gap. Jian Wushuang quickly meditated in his heart. Since he used the Taro Excalibur, he has beheaded and killed the Black Eagle Supreme, etc., are all elementary supremes. He can still kill the old-fashioned supremes of the high-level realm of Lai Ling Extreme ICANT, be sure. Then, it's better to use other magical powers to drag the Lai Ling Supreme and Bei Ming Supreme, and then kill and kill. Jian Wushuang's eyes were frozen, his eyes filled with cold and murderous power, locked on the face of Qinghe Supreme who came from the attack. Kill Qinghe Supreme. And at this time, the three supreme masters immediately followed. Ha, sword unparalleled thief, you would bury your own body. Qinghe Supreme stood in the middle, and looked at Jian Wushuang up and down, and there was a cruel color in his eyes. But Baiming Supreme and Liu Supreme both stepped on their feet, blocking the sword Wushuang's retreat at once, and wielding a technique of closing the sky, creating a space of its own. The sword unparalleled thief, the old man said, I will kill you today. Go die. I saw Qinghe Supreme laughed wildly and took the lead. The seven-star magic knife in his hand reappeared, and the majestic magic swept through all directions and shattered the starry sky. Heaven will kill him, he must drive him crazy first. Qinghe, it's not my sword Wushuang who you today, but you. Jian Wushuang said lightly. The next moment, his eyes suddenly swayed and condensed into substance. Talented, amazing life. Chapter 4366. Boom! In an instant, a force of suppression from the higher life to the soul of the lower life suddenly descended and shrouded the three supremes. Bronze ancient tripod, go! When sword Wushuang flipped his right hand, a bronze ancient tripod appeared, and under a rotation, a large amount of innate fire was released again. These auras of instinctive Dinghua instantly burned like a fire, forming an overwhelming tendency to burn the sky, and rush towards the fierce Lord Supreme. Jian Wushuang, you Xiao Ding are extraordinary. The innate Dinghua inside is enough to threaten the ordinary Supreme, but it is not enough for this seat. Lai Sun shook his head and waved several shields of light, blocking the raging fire. Jian Wushuang turned a deaf ear to him and ignored him, but turned it over again with his right hand, and Wu Weapon Sword appeared in his hand. Yong Yi now. Suddenly, Wu Weapon's Excalibur started from the point of the sword and disappeared every inch. Alas! A trace of dark mist like black ink poured from the soles of Jianhua's feet, and then ran towards Baiming Supreme to form a large black ball, wrapping Baiming Supreme in it. In that ball, a trace of deprivation of power appeared, as if there were a pair of big hands invisible, and began to deprive Baiming Supreme of everything. In the end, Jian Wushuang retracted his gaze, took a deep breath, and pulled back the Taro Excalibur from the back with a backhand. Puff puff. With the birth of the Terra Excalibur, a horrendous sword that shook the heavens and the earth, shook the world for 9 days, and appeared in this world. Fengrui, domineering, evil, destroying and dying. It is impossible to use any words to describe the horror of this sword pressure, even if Qinghe Supreme is the supreme of the universe. In the face of this brilliant sword pressure, it can't help jumping his eyelids and his back cold. Is the killing trick? Qinghe Supreme narrowed his eyes and sneered. Sword unparalleled, you use this Tai Luo Excalibur, but it has only one blow. I think after this blow, what else do you use? What about your own strength? It's enough to kill you. Sword Wushuang coldly opened. Suddenly, the power of the endless avenue poured into the Taro Excalibur, breaking the 3 seals under the cover of the supreme cloth. Suddenly, the Taro Excalibur really shined golden light, and the scarlet eyes at the position of the sword opened suddenly. Breaking dawn. Jian Wushuang whispered. Click. A golden light emerged, linking the sky and the sky together. Jian Wushuang disappeared, and merged with the Taro Excalibur, moving towards Qinghe Supreme at an extremely fast speed. At this moment, all the stars are overshadowed, the entire retrospective land stops rotating, and the void is directly like broken glass, opening up numerous cracks, and a sprinkling of fairy rays is shining to illuminate the world. The previous Taro swordsmanships were all spurred by Dominion Divine Power and Wu Weeping Sword, but now, this Breaking Dawn swordsmanship is motivated by the Taro sword and the power of the Avenue, and the power is more than a few level. As the sword unparalleled swept across the starry sky, it was like an endless night torn by electricity, and the entire sky was suddenly torn into a crack. Qinghe Supreme suddenly shrank his pupils, and secretly horrified, how can this sword unparalleled thief be so horrible that he can compete with the old man without using the Taro Excalibur? Even using the Taro Excalibur feels threatening. I'm afraid that after using this Taro sword, this sun is enough to kill any supreme being below the supreme in the universe. If this sun achieves the supreme, wouldn't he, even the top supreme would take him can't? Qinghe Supreme couldn't help but be taken aback by his own conjecture, only feeling a scalp tingling. In this world, how can we allow such a villainous figure to exist? Qinghe, go to death. In the golden thread coming at a rapid speed, the sound of Jian Wushuang's icy bitterness came. Qinghe Supreme suddenly raised his head to look at Jian Wushuang, but suddenly he laughed. Swords warriors, you are indeed the most talented person ever since. You have the power to kill the old man when you hold a Taro sword. After a pause, he shook his head and said, it's just a pity that even if the old man arrives, you will kill the old man first. I saw a big wave of his sleeve, and suddenly a scarecrow with yellow rune paper appeared in his hand. This scarecrow is simply the supreme death rune that is strong enough to withstand a life and death crisis. Go with. Qinghe Supreme pushed with his right hand, and immediately welcomed the scarecrow to Jian Wushuang. However, a shocking situation has emerged. The moment the scarecrow first touched Daybreak Genmong, he was severely torn into countless fragments, and Daybreak Genmong didn't mean a little wear and tear, and once again killed toward Qinghe Supreme. Suddenly, Zhang He's face was frozen and laughed. What's going on? Next moment. He turned his head violently, looking desperately into the sea of fire, but was the swift and stubborn Supreme Master who was able to cope with it, exasperated to the extreme. Li Ji, are you in me? Don't wait for him to finish. Daybreak Genmong has already passed through his chest fiercely. The sharp and overbearing Tai Luo Jianqi directly smashed his immortal Supreme Godhead. Behind Qinghe Supreme Jin Guang gradually dissipated, exposing Jian Wushuang's black hair figure in black. Jian Wushuang held the Taro Excalibur and breathed slightly. What? I saw Qinghe Supreme glance down at the hole in his chest, and then shattered an inch from the foot in the roar of rage. In the end, the whole person collapsed and crushed like a fortress piled up on the beach. The supreme generation has fallen. On the other side, the stubborn supreme emperor who was deeply trapped in the middle of the sea of fire had a smile on his face. Stupid, that the rune for death is the second life of the old man, will it really be used for you? Besides, it is better for the old man to enjoy the treasures such as the Taro Excalibur. I saw the worn and dirty starry robe of him, and the starlight suddenly became bright, like a pearl that had been dusted off, releasing his own glory. Lai Sun's expression was gloomy, and he stepped out of the sea of fire step by step. The fiery fire could not hurt him. In just a few breaths, he walked out of the endless flames of fire completely, as if he was in a humble court. He looked at Jian Wushuang, twisted his neck, and smiled slightly. Sword Wushuang, now that you have finished using the Tailor Excalibur, what else do you use to stop the old man? Jian Wushuang narrowed his eyes and looked at Lai Ju Supreme without saying a word. This man seems to be taciturn, but in fact he has a terrible mind. The Qinghe Supreme lives with him under the stars, and the friendship of dozens of chaotic eras, he was said to be Yin, then Yin really. Want to come, if Qinghe Supreme did not trust this person completely, and did not use other means, Jian Wushuang would not have been able to kill him with such a sword. Extremely strong, good plan. Jian Wushuang said lightly. It was hard to hear whether it was ironic or praise. Chapter 4367. Within the Land of Traceability. Baiming Supreme is still trapped in the kingdom of eternal night, and the vast starry sky is the only opposite of Jian Wushuang and Lai Ling. Lai Sun smiled and said nothing. The sword is unparalleled, and the person who knows current affairs is Junjie. In front of absolute strength, whether it is your so-called force to overpower the same generation of talents, or the Taro Excalibur in your hand. It's nothing, but it's like a dream bubble, it's broken. He twisted his beard on his chin and smiled with a little confidence, as if he knew everything. Zhizhu was holding it. Jian Wushuang's expression was calm. He knew that his enemies from the beginning to the end, but it was the supreme martyr. Either the Qinghe Supreme who has fallen or the Baiming Supreme who is still trapped in the kingdom of eternal night. He does not say that he has 100% certainty to kill him, but if he wants to leave, relying on the two people's means, absolutely can't stop him. Only this stubborn supreme. The gap between him and the Supreme Lord Lai is too great. The Ultimate Master and the Supreme Master are completely different from one big realm and two small realms. What's more, the difference between these realms is completely the difference between cloud and mud. In the face of Jian Wushuang's silence, Lai Ling Supreme did not care, and continued, Sword Wushuang, the old man is wasting your lips with you now because the old man has no heart to kill you. The old man still gives you a chance, you have to figure this out. Oh! Jian Wushuang narrowed his eyes. Lai Ju took a look at Jian Wushuang and said, Sword Wushuang, I have to say that your luck and talent are the highest in this era. It can even be said that since the birth of the universe, you can stand out from the crowd. At the top of the list, maybe the first day of the universe, the 100,000 pre-chaos prehistoric universe, can be a bit on your side. Suddenly, Lai Ling suddenly turned sharply and grinned, sword unparalleled. If the old man didn't guess wrong, the bronze ancient tripod you used before is the 100,000 Chaodong prehistoric kingdom. Chaos tripod? Speaking of this sentence, Lieju Supreme flashed an irresistible envy. Wu Yi Chao Chao Ding? Jian Wushuang was shocked when he heard his words. This was the first time he heard someone say the origin of the bronze ancient tripod. He had been wondering long ago that the power displayed by this bronze ancient tripod was not inferior to the Taro Excalibur. In theory, it should definitely be one of the most important treasures in the universe. The sword is unparalleled. You do and have to think about being stupid. Although the eyes of the old man are blind, they are not blind. People who can manipulate the chaotic innate 5 elements in ancient times have opened their fingers and counted only 2 or 3. The only powerful one is the Ding Chao Chao Ding. However, you don't seem to be able to fully awaken this chaotic Ding Wu Ding. Otherwise you should be able to directly draw the power of chaos. Lai Sun said, shaking his head. Jian Wu's eyes twinkled, for fear that the fierce Lord Supreme Shirji did not make a mistake. The bronze ancient tripod he obtained from the prisoner dragon was the chaotic Pentium tripod in the east of the kingdom. At the same time, Jian Wushuang also understood why Lai Ling Supreme had been slow to kill him. I am afraid that the Supreme Martyr saw that he possessed the chaos, but he subconsciously thought that he had also inherited Jiadong's heritage. He wanted to learn more about Jiadong's burial place from his mouth, and more benefits. The fierce greed of the fierce lord was far beyond his imagination. Jian Wushuang, the old man's patience is running out. You obediently surrender the Taro sword and the Wu Ding Chao Ding, as well as the Taro sword and other opportunities. As long as you are obedient, the old man may not accept you. As a boy, although you will become the slave of the old man forever, you can survive. Liezhen Supreme twisted his neck and said, "If I don't say it?" Jian Wushuang replied with a glance at him. Lai Sun Supreme smiled slightly, with a hint of sarcasm in his eyes. Sword unparalleled, you are too overestimating your own strength, and you are too underestimating your husband. The gap between the Supreme and the Ultimate Master is far away from you. It is unthinkable that even if you have more supernatural power and more divine power, no matter how powerful your precious treasure is, in the eyes of the old man, it is just an ant. Having said that, Lai Sun paused for a while before continuing to say, Sword Wushuang, pity you have no way to go and don't know it, let alone, then the old man will let you see the old man's ability. Lai Sun shook his head, and flicked toward the sword without a finger. With this finger popping up, thousands of rules evolved and turned into various road rules, mixed together to form the power of Xion. In an instant, countless voids shattered, countless wormholes exploded, majestic, unlike the world. With only half a breath, the finger that destroyed the starry sky will fall on Jian Wushuang. Taking a deep breath, Jian Wushuang's backhand reinserted the tailor Excalibur into the back sword box, and a flash of firmness flashed in his eyes. Call out. The next moment, Wu Wei's Excalibur united in his hands. Now that there is no road ahead, we will use our 3-foot blue sword to cut a path of life and death. The power of his boulevard is surging towards this finger. Chopper Star. A 5,000 Zhang Mori blue sword piercing the sky suddenly pierced the sky. The swordman's brilliance was so extreme that it seemed to break the entire universe. At that moment, there was only the swordman who cut the sun and the moon. In this swordman, the warrior's eyes were turbulent and the whole man was Black Fei Yang, holding this extremely blazing hand, Senlan Jianmeng, like a peerless sword before the world. Star cutting, a real killer created by Jian Wushuang. After he realized the power of the avenue, he also sublimated to the highest level and reached another level. This sword is split, and the Tao is full of vitality and charm, full of the meaning of heavenly cycle. This sword is the guardian. What is guardianship? In Jian Wushuang's understanding, as long as the enemies of this world are beheaded and killed, 9 days and 10 territories will be conquered, so that no one will dare to hurt him for half a point, and no one will dare to hurt him for half a point. It is really a powerful sword that has stepped into the category of Dao. Lai Sun shook his head in admiration, but there was no fear in his eyes. Unfortunately, the old man also realized the Tao. The voice dropped, and I saw a finger pressed by Lai Ju, and let it shine again. This Huang sword was split on a finger he pressed, and it only invaded Baizhang, just like glass hitting a stone, and it broke apart. The shattered sword turned into countless ways, sweeping in all directions, crushing the countless meteorite in this retrospective land, and then shot farther into the universe and disappeared. Instantly, Jian Wushuang's pupils shrank. Without waiting for him to think about it, that finger had been shot on Jian Wushuang, hitting him fiercely, breaking all the way to the void. Shocking the tree is ridiculous. There was no change in the look of relief extreme, and he shook his head. Chapter 4368. Fu Jun. In the universe, the cry of frost and heartbreaking sounded. Immediately afterwards, I saw the coldness rushing out of Zhentian Bay. Click click. Jian Wushuang slammed into an asteroid fiercely, penetrating the asteroid directly, and then swept back tens of thousands of feet before the figure stopped. There were a few cracks in his god's body, and his face was pale. Shuang, why are you out? Jian Wushuang glanced down at the cold frost, forcibly pressed the remaining boiling power in his chest, and said, Fu Jun, are you okay? Cold and frosty with a sad face, he strode over and said, I'm fine, you obediently go back to the town of Tianbei. Jian Wushuang shook his head at her, and then stared at Lai Ling Supreme again. I have to say that this Lai Lord is the most powerful enemy he has ever encountered. Oh! Lai Sun turned his eyes to look cold and frosty, then looked at Jian Wushuang, and said with a small smile, Jian Wushuang, this person is your companion? You are so blessed, not only the talent is extremely brilliant, but even this companion talent is also good, it seems to have a chance. Jian Wushuang didn't answer, but took a deep breath, and clenched the Wu Cry Excalibur in his hands again, his eyes blinking constantly, as if thinking in secret. Soon, come again! Jian Wushuang yelled, breaking the Dawn Sword's skill again. A gleam of golden light suddenly appeared. At the beginning, this golden light was only the thickness of hair, but then, the sword of anger was wrapped in it, turning it into a golden thorn, breaking all the darkness of the world, and killing again to the fierce lord. This sword, Exizan, is also the most powerful killing move in the sword without hands. It is extremely fast, like breaking through the violent waves, turning many asteroids along the way into powder, and the associated space is the same time. Shattered and terrified. Shocking sound explosions kept ringing where the golden light passed. This is Taro sword art, right? Lai Ju could not help but move slightly. He remembered that just now, Jian Wushuang held the Taro Excalibur and used this sword technique to kill Qinghe supremely. Unfortunately, if you use the Taro Excalibur to make this sword move, the old man is still afraid of you taking 3 points. You can't take it, but now you can no longer use the Taro Excalibur. You can only rely on your own strength. Just a joke. After that, Lai Ju's eyes were wiped, and within a void of eyes, the dark mansions were suddenly shot. Tian Tong open. He sang softly, and in his eyes, the movement of Jian Wushuang in the dawning golden light suddenly became extremely slow, looking like a snail, struggling to move towards him. With his eyes, he can not only see through all the delusions in the world, but also slow down his movement speed and find flaws. Next moment, Supreme God 9-day finger. The stern sneer sneered. In the void he flicked 9 times in a row, as if playing a pipa. At the same time, 9 gods composed of the supreme divine power, like a meteor passing, bombarded the sword's weakness. I saw the dawning golden light transformed by Jian Wushuang. Every time it was dropped by 1 finger, it shuddered, and the golden light was worn away by 1 point. In the end, under the 8-finger streak, Jian Wushuang's breaking dawn Jianmang was completely shattered, leaving only Jian Wushuang sprinting forward with his sword in a forward shape. Fu Jun. Instantly, the coldness of watching from a distance was frosty, and a heart tightened. In the end, Jian Wushuang deceived himself into the 10 feet of Liji Supreme God body, and the 9th finger was as big as a mountain, and finally fell down and hit the Wu Weeping Sword. There was a rush of mountains, and the power of grasping Qinghe came, and Jian Wushuang's right hand couldn't hold it. Wu Wei's Excalibur was severely collapsed and flying, and the right hand holding the sword was burst and shattered. The breaking dawn sword strokes, even before they were cut off, were shot by the fierce Lord's supreme finger. Jian Wushuang, do you now understand? Is there a gap between you and me? Lai Sun's face was as cold as Han Chuan, and Hemang's twinkling eyes stared at Jian Wushuang, without the slightest sneer. Is it? At this moment, the sallow yellow sword unparalleled in his face, he laughed sharply. The next moment, he grabbed it with his left hand, and the tailored Excalibur, which was held on the back, came out again, and was automatically caught in his left hand. The dawning sword is just a guise. The real killing trick is the Taro Excalibur. In the past, he could only use the Taro Excalibur once. If he wanted to use it for the second time, he would have to recover for a long time. But how can he be the same as before? Go die! There was a flash of madness in Jian Wushuang's eyes, holding the left hand of Tai Luo divine sword, and slashing down towards the fierce Supreme. At this moment, the power of the sword of Wushuang's whole body was madly mobilized, and then poured into the Taro Excalibur as much as it was swallowed by the Taro Excalibur. This sword, no reservations, spare no effort. This sword is enough to cut God. Suddenly, the vertical eyes on the hilt of the Taro Excalibur opened sharply, bloodshot. A majestic breath to the extreme permeated from the Taro Excalibur, and incandescent thunder exploded out of thin air, countless swords swayed, and endless energy interweaved, as if chaotic boiling. Bang! Immediately, an explosion came, as if the heavenly gate was wide open, and the endless fairy light fell. At this moment, the figure of Jian Wushuang seemed to be blurred. In its place, it was a figure in a blue shirt, holding a sword in one hand and a gourd jug in one hand, dim and drunk with eyes, and asked the world with a smile, "Who should I give up?" This is Tai Luo Jianzuan. A horror suddenly appeared on the face of Lieutenant Supreme, and there was no way to remain calm. The person reflected in his eyes at this moment seemed not to be Swordsman, but to become the invincible universe of the 100 Chaos period, and the entire town was invincible. Make countless days proud of the ancient sword respect Taro. Cut! With the deep, cold voice of Jian Wushuang, the sword finally split. In an instant, the entire universe was tens of thousands of feet apart, like a sword. Isn't it only possible to use one sword? How is this possible? Lai Sun's pupils shrank. According to the news from the universe, isn't the sword Wushuang only the one-strike power of the Taro Excalibur? How could he still use the Taro Excalibur now? How can it be? Don't let the supreme deep thought, Tai Luo's Excalibur has been cut down very quickly, so that he has no time to change or avoid, and can only take it. Swords warriors! The Supreme Master Lai understands that Jian Wushuang's use of Breaking Dawn sword art is not to kill him at all, but to distance him from him and catch him off guard. The real killing skill is Taro's sword. Seeing the critical moment of life and death, Lai Sun's right hand quickly flipped over, and suddenly, a puppet doll that looked like crying and laughing, mixed with joy and sadness, appeared in his hands. Chapter 4369. Go with. His face sank, and his right hand quickly squeaked, and then the doll was a little bit more frowny, and instantly, the doll was like alive, twisting its body, crookedly standing up in the void, and replaced it with the Supreme. The whole person disappeared. Huh! The attack target of Taro's Excalibur suddenly changed, locked on this puppet, and severely chopped it down. Suddenly, the puppet doll was torn apart, and the extermination power on the Taro Excalibur also disappeared. Xianhui gradually dissipated, and Sword Wushuang, who was severely overdrawn with a lot of divine power, was unstable. He almost fell from the air, and successively took several strains of magic medicine to restore divine power. The depleted deities were nourished before they could feel better. A magic weapon for death? Jian Wushuang's face sank. This sword Lai Sun was immortal. I was afraid that it would be difficult to kill Lai Sun. Click and wipe. A void not far away was suddenly distorted, and then, the body of Lai Sun's supreme body gradually gathered. His expression was gloomy, his eyes stared at Xiang Wushuang, his eyes flashed coldly. If it had not been for his death in time, I was afraid that under this sword, he had already disappeared and followed in the footsteps of Qinghe Supreme. Well, sword unparalleled, the old man wanted to save you a life. Since you are so ignorant, then you should blame the old man for being ruthless and crush you directly, and the old man will not believe. With the help of the old man, you can insist on not telling yourself various opportunities. Lai Ling Supreme narrowed his eyes, and immediately saw his footsteps, and the void beneath his feet waved directly from the road. By the time his figure reappeared, he had already appeared in Jian Shuang's skull. He raised his foot, and stepped down fiercely towards Jian Wushuang. Suddenly, countless voids perished, and his foot turned directly into a mountain of thousands of miles, suppressing the quartet. Come again! Jian Wushuang's face was pale, but there was a coldness between his eyebrows. The power of countless avenues evolved beside him and turned into various rules. Immediately, his Wu-weeping sword was split again. Dragon blood mystery, divine power burns. Jian Wushuang, who had already been slumped, felt like a flash of light, and his breath rose sharply, soaring. A terrible sun and moon, Feng Rui Jianhong tearing the sky appeared suddenly. However, after this Feng Rui Jianhong was split, he just fell into this big foot. Jianhong was severely broken, and the sword was unparalleled. When stepped down by 3,000 stars, the body collapsed. Fu Jun. Suddenly, as cold as frost falling into the ice cellar, his eyes became flushed and his eyes were wet with tears. I don't know how long, she has never seen Jian Wushuang in such a despair. Watching Lai Ju's expression of indifference, she wanted to chase Jian Wushuang again, biting her teeth as coldly as frost, and the whole body of divine power broke out. A mantis arm is a cart, and it is beyond our control. Lai Sun looked at Leng Rushuang coldly, and waved his hand. A magnificent mighty power blasted out of his hand, and smashed Leng Rushuang directly into the depth of a star. Don't worry, when the old husband kills your husband, Junjian Wushuang, he will send you to be his companion. Lai Sun snorted coldly, then looked at Jian Wushuang again. I saw Jian Wushuang, the body collapsed, and the body reorganized instantly, and the pale face turned into wax yellow. He held the Wu-weeping sword in his right hand, stood trembling and straightened his body, stared at the Supreme Master Li Yi, and suddenly laughed. Jian Wushuang, what are you laughing at? Lai Sun's brow frowned, and the dark wind flickered in the dark eyes. To him now, Jian Wushuang is now a catfish jumping on the chopping board, alive or dead, but only between his thoughts. Relief. Do you really think that I have no idea what to do? Jian Wushuang converged with a smile, shook his head, and his eyes returned to calmness. Ha! A taunt of irony appeared in the eyes of Lai Ling Supreme, and said, Jian Wushuang, let's not talk about your strengths and talents. The old man has to admire you only for your tough and tenacious vitality. Whatever you decide, you can't get out of this retrospective place. Is that so? Jian Wushuang raised an eyebrow, then lowered his head to remove a jade card hanging from his waist, and couldn't help sighing. Blood Wave Supreme, my sword unparalleled owes you again. The next moment, sword unparalleled crushed the waist jade. A crack opened at the waist. A magnificent, as if from the chaos of Taiku, slowly rising from the jade brand. This is? Suddenly, Lai Ju was trembling with horror, and a horror burst into his eyes. This breath is far above him. His strength enough to crush the sword unparalleled, in this breath, is just the difference between a child and an adult. The gap is even greater than he and Jian Wushuang. Rumble. This breath is getting more and more boiling. At this moment, the entire retrospective place seems to be stationary, and everything has stopped functioning. Lai Ju's eyes widened, and I saw that this breath kept condensing and finally turned. A middle-aged man in black with a clean face and expressionless face. The middle-aged man in black is billions tall and his eyes are like mountains. At his feet, nearly 10,000 squares of stars have turned into a pool of blood and stained with a strange red. A horror of power that could not be described in any words, surging up, slamming the quartet, subjecting all the nations, shaking 9 days and 10 places. The Supreme in the Supreme. Blood Wave. Suddenly, Lai Sun's body was trembling and terrified. Blood Wave Supreme, one of the 5 chief supremes of the Life Shrine, is second only to the existence of the Supreme. Bloody Supreme, an earth-shattering epic who has survived the battle of the Holocaust, has fought countless times in his life, once overwhelmed the Taishu Temple, and fought against the newest Emperor's ice mast at night. He once played against the Lord of the Invincible Supreme Diwu Temple, and finally, he shined in the battle with the Dragon Clan, and the Supreme died in his hands, no less than his hands. It can be said that as long as the invincible Supreme cannot be reached, the Bloodwave Supreme can run wild in the universe, and that is the real big man in the depths of the universe. Far from being able to compare to the slain sage who lives in the wild wilderness of the universe. Next moment. The image of Supreme, the eyes slowly opened, without the slightest emotion, looking coldly at Lai Ling Supreme. Who gives you the qualifications to dare to deceive me in the Temple of Life? The endless blood pool condenses, turning into a big hand that covers the sky, and shoots towards the extreme Lai Ju. What horror does the Supreme give in one shot? Especially the supreme existence of the top Supreme such as Blood Wave. At this moment, the avenue of heaven and earth trembled and roared at the same time, countless voids shattered and collapsed at the same time, and the entire retrospective place exploded. Chapter 4370. Escape! Suddenly, Lai Sun's supreme heart was frightened, and he was about to crack. However, the entire universe seemed to be frozen. Under the full blow of Bloodwave Supreme, a huge suction was taken from the palm of the hand, and the entire body of Liu Supreme rolled up and flew towards the palm of this blood wave. This palm was finally depressed. Endless Xianhui stars are rising, and if the palms are visible under this palm, there will be nothing. Lai Ju's body was full of divine power, and he resisted this palm. At this moment, his heart was full of remorse, and he was even more aggrieved. If he had known that Jian Wushuang had such a big killing trick, even if he gave him 10 guts, he would not dare to hunt down Jian Wushuang. Click and wipe. However, nothing said at this time is useless. This palm is the full blow of the Supreme Master. If the Supreme Lord is uncertain, he can still compete with 1 or 2. Bloodwave Supreme's full blow. I saw his feet start, and with this huge power from the palm, the inch-by-inch collapse was worn away, and then his arms began to explode. Jian Wushuang, even if the old man is dead, it will not make you feel better. Lai Ling Extreme turned his head to look at Jian Wushuang, his face turned into a resentment, and he screamed with all his strength, "Supreme God, blood curse!" Suddenly, the eyes of Lai Ling's eyes exploded sharply, 2 bloodstreams were taken out of his eyes, constantly twisted and condensed, and finally hung on the sword Wushuang's head, turning into a scarlet huge killing word. Under this word of killing, all concealed means of Jian Wushuang will have nothing to hide, and will even be like carrion, and will attract thousands of miles around the starry sky. All those who are above the supreme realm will be attracted. Damn! Jian Wushuang's face was suddenly gloomy, his eyes flashed to the extreme. Ha! Sword unparalleled, the old man would have to see, this Bloodwave Supreme's full blow can protect you several times. Bang! In the loud laughter of Ryukyu Supreme, the gods of Ryukyu Supreme shattered, and all vitality was wiped out by the palm of the Supreme. Lai Ju Supreme, just die. And that palm, after killing Lai Ling Supreme, the power gradually disappeared, and finally disappeared invisible and returned to nothingness. Jian Wushuang's feet were empty, his hair was flying, his face was cloudy and cloudy. The fall of Lai Sun's Supreme did not make him feel the slightest joy. The huge kill word hanging over his head was like a beacon in the dark. It was extremely prominent and gave him nothing to hide. He tried to erase the word kill with the power of the road, and tried to see if the antelope mask could cover it, but it was useless, all means were useless. This is trouble. The light of Jian Wu's eyes kept blinking. He knew just by thinking about it, only fearing the word kill, the Supreme of the whole universe would make a sensation for it, and came to hunt him down. Just as Jian Wushuang kept pondering, suddenly a crazy laugh came from not far away. Haha, sword unparalleled, this seat is finally out. I saw in the distance, the kingdom of Yongyi continued to shatter, and finally burst into a blast. Although Bei Ming Supreme was embarrassed, his face was so smooth that he burst out laughing from Yongyi Kingdom. Qinghe Supreme, Lai Ling Supreme, are you all right? Come, let's quickly join hands to win the little thief, Jian Wushuang, and share his treasure. What? Extreme Qinghe? Extreme Liu? The next moment, the laugh on Bai Ming Supreme's face froze, as if he was choking his throat, and his face rose red. I saw a burst of chaos in the surrounding void, and the void burst into countless cracks, and the entire retrospective land was destroyed once. Under this starry sky, where are the shadows of Qinghe Supreme and Liu Supreme? Only the swordless man in black and black hair turned his head slowly, his eyes staring at him coldly. Suddenly, Biming Supreme stayed asleep, but still boldly asked, "Little sword master, this seat asks you, what about Qinghe Supreme and Liu Supreme?" Jian Wu's eyes looked at him strangely, but he did not expect that among the three Supremes who came to hunt him, the weakest Biming Supreme lived the longest. Immediately, he quietly replied, "You guess." For some reason, Biming Supreme heard a faint feeling in his heart, quickly spreading his divine power and feeling the surroundings. The next moment, Biming Supreme changed his face, took a breath, and his lips trembled. Are they dead? Without waiting for his sword Wushuang to answer, he stepped on his feet and surging up his spirit. Just when Jian Wushuang thought that this Biming Supreme was going to avenge the dead Qinghe Supreme and Lai Ling Supreme, he had clenched his Wu crying sword. "Shaxing! This is Xuanxing!" Bei Ming yelled, but turned away and fled, and disappeared in front of Jian Wushuang's eyes after a swift effort. "Okay?" When Jian Wushuang saw this, he couldn't help but look at it, and then his face flashed with the wrong color. Shaking his head, Jian Wushuang did not intend to chase him. This Biming Supreme is nothing but an elementary supreme, which poses no threat to him. At most, it will spread his news, and he is now spreading his head. It doesn't make much difference whether to go out or not. Now what I have to do is to find a place to restore the divine power and really start the bronze ancient tripod. Only in this way can I have the strength to protect myself in the next real war. Jian Wu's eyes flashed quickly, making a decision quickly. Then, with a big wave of the sword, Wushuang Shou entered the town monument as cold as frost, and quickly went in one direction. What Jian Wushuang didn't know was that, just before he was gone, the two Shenmangs flashed like meteors, and suddenly appeared in this retrospective place. The divine light dispersed, revealing two supreme figures. This breath is the Taro magic sword. The sword Wushuang was here before. One of them wore a dipper, a supreme knife on his waist, and his voice sank. Yes, this is the breath of Tai Luo divine sword, and there is still the old ghost of Lai Ling Supreme, and the divine power of Qinghe Supreme fluctuates. It seems that these two people died in the hands of Jian Wushuang. The other one was covered with shackles and stature, with an ugly old woman, and said hoarsely, "Go." Jian Wushuang should not have gone far, we chase. The eyes of that supreme man Dai Doguang flashed, and he looked around in the void, and finally fixed his eyes in the direction that Jian Wushuang was leaving, and a sneer evoked in the corner of his mouth. "You see, there is a channel." Sword Wushuang should have hit the blood curse of the fierce old ghost. The two looked at each other, immediately flashed into shape, and once again turned into two gods, chasing towards Jian Wushuang at a very fast speed. Soon the retrospective land fell into silence. It didn't take long for several supreme masters to arrive one after another. After a little thought or two, their faces were greedy with a greedy smile, chasing away in the direction that Jian Wushuang left. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.